G'day and welcome to James Bond Radio. This is podcast number 37, where we're looking at part one of the world of collecting in Bond. Now, my name's Chris Wright, and with me is my fantastic co-host, good mate, and all-round brilliant conversationalist, Mr. Tom Sears. Let it rip, Tom.
G'day, mate. How you doing?
Not bad, fella. Not bad. Yeah. So we're looking at part one of collecting in Bond. What do you think?
Oh, I'm really excited. Are we going to do the whole podcast as Australians or
I don't
what?
think I can. Mate. Right. So, yeah. I don't know where that came from.
I like it a lot. I'm very excited. The Collectors of Bond. We've interviewed two very, very intriguing people, and we're going to have a two-parter again, aren't we, with these
we are
collectors?
Indeed.
So today we have Mr. David Zaritsky from the Bond Experience, who you've probably seen on YouTube. He does loads of videos on, the clothes of Bond and even the haircuts of Bond, and he even did Daniel Craig's workout, didn't he, at one point?
That's it, yeah.
And a lovely chap he is too, so we're going to be chatting to him today. But I don't want to say more importantly, Chris, but it is quite important. It's a landmark moment. I would just like to cue up some music that I've made especially for this.
Wow, let's listen to it then.
We've only gone and crossed 100,000 downloads, Chris.
What? 100,000 downloads, Tom?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I think it calls for a dance. Yeah. Right, I'm going to pause that.
Woo! Oh yeah, the bridge.
So there we go.
Pretty good.
We're a year and a bit in, and we've crossed 100,000 downloads, as it should be said, I guess.
That's not bad at all, isn't it? And how many of them are you and me constantly pressing download to try and get our numbers up?
I would say at least 3/4.
Yeah, I'd say probably right. That's basically all Tom and I do is in between podcasts. The reason that we changed it ages ago from 1 week to 2 weeks is that we couldn't get enough downloads in within a week. So if we have a 2 week gap, the amount of downloads that Tom and I can do means that it makes us rank a lot higher and we get a lot more downloads. So that's basically why we didn't we, Tom?
Yeah, and really we just like to listen to ourselves, don't we? So we just we make a podcast and then we just listen to it on loop for 2 weeks until the next one comes along. So yeah, it's great.
Pretty much how it goes, yeah.
Good stuff. But in all seriousness, thank you for listening. 100,000 downloads. I never thunk we'd get that sort of numbers coming in. So 14 months in we are now, I guess. It's nice that you guys are sticking around with us and still listening to us drivel on about Bond every 2 weeks. So thank you. We salute you, each and every one of you.
We do indeed. That's amazing. Great numbers. And who knows, if we're around, we could get up to 200,000 maybe this time next year.
Who knows, eh? Absolutely.
Who knows?
So, how you been?
I've been all right. I've been good. It's been interesting because like we said, we sort of done these interviews. So we've been sort of here, there and everywhere and calling people. And the sort of stuff that we've seen and stuff that we've heard has been pretty interesting, pretty damn good. So, enjoyed that. Not bad. How about you? How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. As we talked about last time, I had my little birthday screening of Goldfinger.
Oh yeah,
well, nearly 2 weeks ago now, which was good. I met some of our listeners, and it was cool. We had some beers before and something to eat, and all that kind of stuff. We had who did we have show up? We had Agent Golden Voice. He was the first one on the scene. We had David West, who JBR listeners will remember as with the amazing Max Zorin impression. I'm happiest in the saddle or whatever it was.
Oh my god, that's good. Yeah, that's
we had Steve Batchelor and his mate, whose name has escaped me. I'm sorry, Steve Batchelor's mate, but I think he did say that he wasn't really a hardcore Bond fan. He'd just been dragged along by Steve. And last but not least, we had Darren Noble. And Darren Noble, bless him, he's only gone and bought me a birthday present, which is this wonderful little thing here. Look at that box, isn't it cool?
Aston Martin DB5 Keyring.
Yeah,
awesome.
Look, and if I open it up,
let's have a look.
There it is. How cool is that?
That's so good. Are you gonna put anything on it or keep it in its box?
Well, I looked at it and I'm like, I was in two minds. I was like, man, that almost looks too nice to actually use for keys. Yeah. But then I thought, what I'm going to do with it then is I'm just going to stick it on a shelf and probably look at it once a year. So I thought, no, I'm going to put my keys on it. But it just like the whole box and the whole thing just looks so nice. I'm kind of like I'm reluctant to take it out, but I'm gonna do it at some stage and put my keys on it, definitely.
The alternative is to just buy a DB5 yourself, and then it will all fit together, wouldn't it?
Well, it would be the perfect
and the car.
excuse. It would be the perfect excuse to invest in a DB5, wouldn't it? So yeah, maybe I'll rack out the credit card and see if I can get one of those. But,
Get one on there.
But yeah, it was a good night, man. We hung out and we chatted. I think it's one of those things whereby when you meet a Bond fan, you are never stuck with things to talk about. In the sense that some of the guys were like, this is weird. I'm coming to the pub with a bunch of people I've never met before and I don't know, and it's a bit weird. But then within 10 seconds, it's like you're chatting about, your favorite Bonds or whatever. And it's like, there's never a lull in the conversation. So it was good fun. And of course, we went to see Goldfinger as well. Lovely 4K brand spanking new print by the looks of things. It's never looked better. It's like it was just beautiful on that screen, and the whole screening was sold out as well, which is good to see.
That's amazing. Yeah. That's amazing. And did you have good seats? Were you sort of to the centre or the side?
Well,
or?
we left in good time. We were like, the place where we had beers was just around the corner, and then we went kind of a good best part half an hour before it started, but it was already pretty chock-a-block, and we managed to kind of score a row. There was, I can't remember how many of us there were now. It's probably about 11 of us in total.
Oh wow! Excellent.
And we managed to score one row that had that many seats in.
That's good.
And yeah, but it was good, man. It was good to see real appreciation for Bond, even a 50-year-old movie on the big screen being sold out. It was cool.
That's amazing. And do you remember what sort of conversations you all had? Was there one sort of topic that stands out, or was it just general chit chat about all things?
It was just sort of general chit chat, really. It was just kind of, I got David West to reperform his Zorin impression for me, which nice. It was as good live as it was recorded.
What you should have done is record it again and then use it as your ringtone, or whenever you get a message. Yeah. How cool would that be? That'd be
Indeed,
awesome.
It would be good. Maybe we should start a ringtone store on the website with all the quotes. Yeah. That would be a bloody good idea, actually.
I think it would be. Yeah, that's good.
But yeah, it was cool. It was a good night out. We should definitely arrange another JBR get together when you can make it. And the trouble was, it was Easter Sunday, so it was like everybody had other plans usually. So it was tricky to for a lot of people to arrive. But I think if we arrange it in with more notice next time on a more easy weekend or something, we can make something happen, I reckon.
Yeah, I think I'm well up for that. I was a bit gutted, obviously I couldn't make it, but yeah, I mean, there's always sort of screenings here, there, and do you know how long the screenings at the cinema you went to are going on for? It's still for another few weeks, isn't it? Or?
Yeah, there's still a fair few movies that they've got. I think they're coming up to Octopussy. I think that might be the next one. So there's a good few weeks. It's every Sunday, so whenever that runs out, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, we'll definitely have to arrange another one, and we'll stick it on the Facebook and let everyone know, and see how many we can get together.
Definitely. And in other news, for my birthday, I thought I'd treat myself. I went to visit good old Sylvan Mason again, who
she's lovely.
Yeah, old school JBR listeners will remember from our interview with her last year sometime. The daughter of Jack Whittingham, the guy that wrote the original Thunderball screenplay. And you might remember as well, she showed us some of her artwork, didn't she, during that interview?
It was brilliant as well. I remember that this was pre-Dr. No stuff, wasn't it? So this is the first imagery, the first imagining of Bond and what it might look like and stuff. Yeah, I was fascinated by it.
Yeah, so it's the concept art, the original concept art she inherited from her dad for Thunderball. So it's like, sketches of divers under the water with sharks and Bond and Domino walking along the beach and stuff. And like you say, it's kind of pre Eon Productions. It's like when Kevin McClory and stuff was trying to get the first Bond film off the ground, and that was the kind of concept art for it. And she's made some really cool prints. And I remember thinking when we saw them last year, I was like, man, I need to get myself a set of those at some point. And then because it was my birthday, I thought, you know what, I'm going to treat myself. So I went along for a visit. Chose my prints, had about 5 or 6 cups of tea, and chatted about Bond and life and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so it was good to see Sylvan again, and I'm gonna get those framed and mounted and all that kind of stuff, and they will adorn my walls for the end of time, I would imagine. So
hopefully, if you get 1 or 2, stick them behind you when you're recording the podcast for sure.
Damn right, absolutely.
Yeah, nice.
And in other news, I've been a busy boy the last couple of weeks, to be honest with you. When it comes to Bond, I've just finished reading Matthew Parker's GoldenEye, the where Bond was born, Ian Fleming's Jamaica, and it was bloody good. I tell you what, I read through that book. I got it on Audible, so I listened to it, and it's. I feel like I know Fleming even more now after reading that book. The cool thing about it is, and obviously you interviewed him last year, didn't you? Was that he kind of goes through like the years of Fleming's life leading up to when he's writing the books, and then he kind of describes, it'll be, okay, Casino Royale, and it'll talk a little bit about the story and kind of what was going on in Fleming's life while he was writing that book. And then it goes on to the next book and does the same. And it's really
in-depth
interesting
stuff.
Yeah. And it's kind of like where you there really is like a kind of parallel between like what happens to Bond in the books with what happens to Fleming in real life. It's like there's loads of little things, like the further you go on through the story, you kind of, you hear the stories of Fleming drinking more and his health being in decline and, being a bit down in the dumps because of the whole Thunderball court case and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And there's kind of lines that he puts into the stories that he could almost have been writing about himself. It's really interesting.
Wow.
And the detail Matthew goes into when he's kind of analysing the stories and kind of comparing it to real life is really interesting. So I highly recommend it to anyone who hasn't read that. That's Goldeneye, Where Bond Was Born, Ian Fleming's Jamaica, by Matthew Parker.
Well, see, I haven't had a chance to read it yet, so I'm going to get on that for sure. He was such a nice guy. He was a really, really good guy to interview, and obviously we met him as well, and proper nice chap. And now it sounds as if it's something that we've got to do. Now, I've been kind of busy as well on the reading front. I've literally just finished Q, the biography of Desmond Llewellyn.
There he is.
There he is. Good old Desmond. And and it was a really good book, actually. It was quite sort of detailed about his early life and how he kind of, he was obviously Welsh and his family with the mines and all that. But he got into acting quite early, but he never sort of hit the big time, and he wasn't quite sure why. And obviously, by the time he got round to making Q, he was that little bit older than the majority of people, and then you got some really nice little tidbits around during the Bond films and his experiences and everything like that. So it was a really, really interesting read, actually. So again, there's another one for our listeners if they're interested. And this one was authored by Sandy Hernew.
There we go. I think out of everybody involved in Bond, like for example, we've said before, haven't we? Like when you look at Roger, it's like, oh, you just love Roger and you want to hang out with Roger. I think if you could boil everything down to like one person who would be the most heartwarming member of the kind of whole Bond family, I think that's got to be Desmond, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a person in the world that doesn't love Desmond. How can you not love Desmond? He is just like, he is sort of the grandfather or uncle to everyone. I suppose Roger's your uncle. Desmond would be your granddad.
Yeah,
definitely. He'd dress up as Father for Christmas, and sorry for any of our young listeners, but he'd dress up, wouldn't he? He'd kind of and do that sort of thing. And I mean, he's lovely. He's lovely.
You got to love Desmond. Every time he's on screen, it always makes me smile. So it's one of those things. So yeah, do you know what? I did have that book years ago. I remember having that on my bookshelf somewhere. God knows what happened to it. But that should be another one to have a read of.
Definitely.
So before we get cracking and we talk about the collectors of Bond, make sure you come and join us on Facebook. Just put James Bond Radio into the search box. Join us on Twitter, which is @JamesBondRadio. And come to our website, which is jamesbondradio.com, and join in the conversation on there. We've got quite a popular comment system with blog posts that some of our listeners write. We've obviously got Linda Zoo's This Week in James Bond feature and all that kind of stuff. So there's lots of chat going on over there, so come and join in on that. And last but not least, come and give us a lovely 5-star review on iTunes.
If you want to.
Not even if you don't want to, do it anyway.
We're not forcing you. But
no, but well, if you listen to our last episode, you'd understand why we say that. Come and give us a review on iTunes, and make sure you subscribe on iTunes as well, because that really helps us to rank higher and get more downloads and all that kind of stuff. And if you're not an iTunes user, you can always use the Stitcher app, which is basically like iTunes for podcasts for Android devices. So you can come and do that as well. And of course, you can leave us a SpeakPipe voicemail message as well over on the website. So there's a button on the right-hand side that just says leave us a voicemail. Just click that and you can leave us a message, whether it's a quote, whether it's a trivia or just a question or whatever. Get in touch and we might play it on the show.
And that's what we love, isn't it? We like a lot of fans getting in touch, giving us all their thoughts, their stories, their quotes, everything like that. It's great. It's what brings everyone together when they're listening, isn't it?
It does. In the world of James Bond fandom, there's so much to talk about, and everybody seems to have like a unique story about what brought them to Bond and what they love and sometimes what they don't like about Bond. So it's interesting to hear from you all. So make sure you get in touch.
Yeah, definitely. So now there is something which we talked about last time with our last podcast was about the villains of Bond. Was it the last one or the one before?
That was the one before last. We did Man with the Golden Gun last time, didn't we?
Yeah, that's right. Man with the Golden Gun last time. So prior to that, we did sort of villains of Bond, a nice two-parter. And we asked people, well, you and I both came up with an idea for a sort of a rating system with villains, with like a tiers, maximum of 4 per tier, and obviously rate them as you would sort of your favorite to your least favorite. Now, after we put that up on the website, we had quite a few people get in touch and sort of leave their own ratings of villains, and it was really interesting to see how much difference there are between everyone. I mean, there are one or two who are generally in the top sort of few, one or two that are generally in the bottom, but there are some real surprising choices and decisions that people make where I'm reading it thinking, wow, they've put that person that high, or wow, they've put that person that low. And even between everyone that came in, they're sort of it's completely at odds sometimes. But what I have done, you'll be happy to hear, is basically I've taken all the ratings that we received, including yours and my own as well, and I've basically put them, I gave added up all the ratings, put them in order. So now we know from everyone that has got in touch, basically, we know what the list of villains are. So we've got 25 in total. So we know from 25 through to 1, who is the best.
So what you're saying, Chris, is you've gone through the comments system on the on the website. You've taken everybody's ratings of all the villains. You've collated it into a spreadsheet, and then you've arranged them based on a vote count on who is the best, all the way down to who is the worst Bond villain in the opinion of the JBR listeners.
Well, I had a little time to myself, so I.
My friend, I salute you for the effort you've gone into that. How long did that take you?
It took a while. It took a little while. I'm not going to lie to you, but it was fun because it was, the ultimate goal. It was worth it in the end. So, okay. So what we're going to do is, first of all, I'd say a quick thanks to some of the people that submitted their list. Was Darren Noble again. So thanks, Darren. Stu Bell, Jason Yelane, Judah Zachary, Jacob Alzamora, George Ferenz, David Diabolik, Jeff Silence, Joshua David Goiner, Yita Byum, and obviously both of us as well. And for anyone else that did, thanks, because obviously that's what we needed. And if anyone listens to the results of this and are thinking, that's not right, what's this about? Come on. Then feel free to add your own sort of lists in the tier system on our website as well, because it'll be great to see. If we get about 200, then I might not be able to do the whole. That
might take a little bit of time. But we've basically, just in case you haven't seen it, there's a dedicated post called the JBR Villain Rating System on the website, jamesbondradio.com, and in the comments section of that post is where everybody's kind of posted their ratings. So if you want to get involved, head on over to there and let us know your rating. So let's hear it, man. Let's do the countdown.
Okay, so I'm going to start in, obviously, we're going to go in descending order. So now this is probably the biggest surprise out of them all. Okay, so this is the villain that's come in, you could say last place. If you want to.
I'm gonna make a prediction in my head. I'm not going to say it because I don't want to spoil your list.
I know who you think it is, and you'll be surprised. You'll be very surprised.
All right,
I was extremely surprised. The last place villain, and I couldn't believe this, was Gustav Graves. Can you believe that?
That is not a surprise at all. But I think in every one of those I saw when I kind of skim read the comments, is he was either in last place or one up from the bottom. That's kind of generally where you see that fella.
He didn't fare all that well. And to be honest, he was at the bottom by quite some way. So if there are any Gustav Graves fans out there that are going outraged at the moment, screaming at their laptop or computer or iPhone or whatever, feel free to send in and let us know. Okay, so in 24th place out of 25, we have from the Living Daylights, Mr. Brad Whitaker.
Okay, interesting.
So now, I think when we had a look at the villains, he sort of came across as one of the light-hearted ones. and it's not saying that they're bad because they're all good. It's just this is what happened. You can't argue with this. This is the people have spoken.
Yeah,
they have indeed.
Yeah.
Okay, so in place number 23, we have a good friend of yours, Mr. Elliot Carver.
Okay, interesting.
But these are all kind of how we,
I would
no surprises yet.
Yeah, no surprises yet. Yeah,
no surprises yet. And I think that will continue for a little while. Okay, so in place number what am I saying? Place number 22, we have Mr. Dominic Green.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. Yeah. I'm kind of in agreement so far, generally speaking. Yeah.
Okay, and now the next person who obviously missed out on the top 20, the next villain we have in place number 21 is Mr. Aris Christatos.
Okay, I think again, generally speaking, sounds about right.
So just to recap, the last 5 that we've got are Graves, Whittaker, Carver, Green, and Christatos. Now I think that's pretty much fair enough. I know obviously some people's it will be different, but overall this is what we've had so far. So making it into the top 20, at number 20 we have General Orlov.
Okay.
So again, he's not sort of a biggie villain, but he still did okay. So I think making the top 20 is fair enough for him. Just behind Orlov, in fact, really close in the points. In number 19 was General Koskov.
Okay, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. Yeah, cool.
So this is following. Okay, now we're getting into some pretty big villains here. Okay, so place number 18, we have Mr. Karl Stromberg.
Again, yeah, I think this whole kind of like lower end of the tier is kind of evening out roughly how we said it. Some might be in slightly different order, but I'm excited to hear the first big shocker. So let's hear it. Let's go for it.
Okay, so in place number 17 we have Kamal Khan. So that's again is kind of where we thought. Okay, now this could be an interesting one. Place number 16, so just missed out on the top 15. We have Blofeld from Diamonds Are Forever. Now, some people put him right at the end. Some people said, he's in drag, what are you talking about? He's like the worst Bond. Some people think he's actually really, really good. So what do you think? Place 16, do you think that's fair? I think that's...
I think that's roughly about it. I mean, he's an iconic character, and Stavro Blofeld, but I think that portrayal of him probably isn't the best. So, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay.
I think I might have the first shot coming up now. Okay, so they made it into the top 15. But in 15th place is, and I know Linda Zhu is going to go mad when she hears this, absolutely mad. In 15th place is Mr. Alec Trevelyan.
Whoa! Now, I wasn't expecting that.
There we go, see? So Alec Trevelyan, 006 in 15th. Now, out of 25, that's quite low down, really, isn't it? It's not even halfway. But like I said, the people have spoken, and... And 15th place.
I bet the next edition of This Week in James Bond is going to be written in all capitals from sheer anger and fury. Yeah.
I think it might be. Okay, so just pipping Trevelyan in place number 14. Now, this is potentially a little bit lower than I thought it might be. But in place number 14, we have the gorgeous Elektra King.
Okay, now I can understand that one because a lot of people would be like, because The World Is Not Enough tends to not fare too high in people's kind of feelings in the whole Bond series. So I can understand why she ranks low. Personally, I think she deserves to be a lot higher on that one.
I'd put her higher, I think. But
interesting.
Yeah, but there we are, number 14. Okay, so 13, the unlucky number. We have in 13th place, Mr. Hugo Drax.
Oh, I bet you're not happy about that, are you?
Well, personally, I'd put him at least two or three higher. I'd put him probably, maybe even 2 or 3 higher around that. But 13th place. But again, that's pretty much middle of the road, and I don't think that's too bad. I can see why he's where he is. Put it that way.
So I guess what's tricky is that now we're approaching the top 10. It's kind of like you've got some real heavy hitters, and something has to give somewhere. So let's keep it going. What's next? Okay,
so in 12th place. Now this could be a shock because this particular person was really high on a lot of lists, but also surprisingly quite low on a lot of lists. Okay. So in 12th place, we have Mr. Raul Silva.
Wow.
Tiago Rodriguez. Yeah.
Interesting.
So didn't make the top 10. He's back in 12th. Now, for me, I've put him a lot higher than that. I thought he was great in Skyfall. I thought he was a really good villain. But like I said, people have spoken. 12th place he is at the moment.
Like we said during the villains episode, I think it's going to take a little bit of time, isn't it, for that his position in the grand scheme to really solidify, because he's a bit too new at this point, isn't he?
Yeah, that were my feelings.
When you're ranking him against a Goldfinger or a Blofeld, it's difficult at this point.
Yeah, of course it is. Of course it is. Yeah. Now, in 11th place, probably one of the most unlucky places to be, because he's just missed out on the top 10, we have the one-eyed Emilio Largo.
Okay. Yeah, I can kind of see that. You know, like we said ourselves, it's kind of like he's iconic in my mind, but in the general public's mind, he's probably one of those almost kind of not forgotten villains, but just the one that doesn't leap to mind.
Exactly, yeah. Okay, so now we're getting into big boy territory here. We're into the top 10, Tommy, the top 10.
It reminds me of Top of the Pops, man. We need some music going on in the background.
We do, yeah. And in 10th place, we have someone which I would definitely put higher. He is the crazed psychopath, Mr. Max Zorin, in 10th.
Okay, interesting, yeah.
So it's not bad. He made the top 10, though, so that's good. Now, literally, I must mention, Largo missed out on the top 10 by 3 points.
Okay.
I did a sort of point system. So Largo was really close. No, I know. Okay, now the person who's 9th only beat Zorin by 1 point. Okay, so they were really close. In 9th place, we have Mr. Dr. Kananga, or Mr. Big Dr. Kananga.
Okay,
now, I think that's about right. He's solid. I think that's a really good placing for Kananga, because some people might. I always thought he'd be a villain that not many people would get. Yeah. But I think he's a really good villain, and I think a top 10 spot for him is really good. So cool. I'm happy with that. Okay, and into 8th place. Now, this is comfortably in 8th place. We have a person who you briefly met, or at least saw, Mr. Franz Sanchez.
There he is. Okay, good stuff. Do you know what I found in my discussions that I've looked at online is Sanchez is rated really high as a villain with a lot of people. Yeah. Most people sort of say, you know, he's obviously not up there in terms of iconicness as a Blofeld or a Goldfinger or whoever. Yeah. Everybody seems to love Sanchez. Everyone seems to have got like a place in their heart for old Franz.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of him. I'd personally maybe even put him. Well, no, around there maybe one. Yeah, around there. I think 8th is good. 8th is not anyone in the top 10. You're on good ground, on solid ground. Yeah. Okay, so in 7th place. Now I must say there is a big jump in the points difference between 6th and 7th. Okay, but in 7th place, quite comfortably as well, is the man with the golden gun, Mr. Francisco Scaramanga.
Very nice.
In 7th, and I like that. I think that's good, isn't it?
That works,
that's good. Yeah. Now, we are getting into big territory, though, aren't we? The big hitters are coming out.
This is where we're going to have to. Well, it's funny because it's like rating this level of villain is very, very difficult, and you have to get brutal to get the ones. You know, you've just got to do it. So the fact that we've got the actual people's statistics is going to be interesting. So come on, let's hear it. I'm excited.
So I was going to say just missing out. They have missed out on the top 5, but they were well ahead of 7. Is a really top, one of the villains you love and I think is great as well is Le Chiffre. So in 6th place, Le Chiffre. Yeah. I mean, I actually put him a bit lower in my rating, but I think he deserves 6th. Like there's nothing wrong with him, is it? And it's clever, and he's got the eye and everything. For me, I think he's brilliant.
Le Chiffre is top tier for me. I stick him right up the top. But again, I think for a lot of people, it's just going to take a bit of time to see where he naturally falls in the public consensus. Yeah. Cool, but right. 6 is a good rating, I think, for a relatively recent villain like that.
Okay, and now ding 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 ding, we're into the top 5. Here we go. Okay, now these are the big players. These are the big. Well, basically, they are the legends, aren't they, really? Okay, so in 5th place, now 5th and 4th, there's only 1 point separating them, yeah?
Okay.
In 5th place, we have your favourite lady to go to bed with, Rosa Klebb.
Okay, interesting. Okay. Yeah, she's up there, iconic point to shoe and all that stuff, definitely.
So that rounds out all the females so far, even though I think we only had 2. But anyway, so in place number 4, literally by 1 point, we have Dr. No.
Number 4.
So the very first villain, very first villain. Now, Dr. No, I'm a big fan of, and I think top 5 definitely for sure. And fourth place, I think, is great for him. So that's really good. So now we are literally into the top three. Now, is your mind ringing bells as to who those top three are? Do you know who they are?
I think I do, yes.
Okay. So
and
here we go.
I'm intrigued to see which order they fall, especially
which order they come out.
Yeah.
Okay. So now in third place, I must say that this was very close to 4 and 5. Okay. So although they're third, it was still quite close to 4. Now in third place, we have Blofeld from On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Oh, okay.
The Savalas Blofeld.
Nice.
Okay. Now that is quite a high. I mean, top 3. That's amazing. Yeah. And Blofeld, I love. Majesty's, we both love. But that's a really good result, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Fantastic result there. Okay, so the top 2, we both know who the top 2 are.
Yeah,
okay?
We do. Okay.
Now there is a big difference between the top 2 and place number 3. So these two were ahead of the game by quite some way.
Okay.
But in place number 2...
Are you going to do that thing like Simon Cowell does when he tells people they're voted off, like where you just pause for ages?
I might do now, yeah. In place number 2, we have... Blofeld from You Only Live Twice, which means in number 1 by a huge, what are we talking about there? Like almost 30 points, 25 points in the lead in number 1. Clearly the winner by a million miles, Auric Goldfinger.
How about that, man? Do you know what? I'm somewhat taken aback by that. Now, I always just assumed for everybody that Donald Pleasance's Blofeld would be the number 1 Bond villain because he is the most iconic, isn't he? Do you know what I mean? He was the one that was parodied in Austin Powers, and as as the saying goes, imitation is the highest form of flattery. So you think that's the one that everyone's going to go for, but maybe Austin Powers has dulled Donald because of that. I don't know.
Maybe.
It's funny. I would have said for the majority of people that Goldfinger would have been a top 3, but I wouldn't have guessed he'd be number 1, and by such a margin as well. That's really interesting.
He was clearly the winner by a long way. But he's an immense villain. He is an amazing villain, Goldfinger. So there we are. I mean, I think that's. I although there are slight differences to my one and to your one, I'm actually really happy with that. How it's turned out. Yeah. There isn't anyone where I think, oh no, they definitely shouldn't be there.
Did anybody rate somebody like Gustav Graves unnecessarily highly?
No.
Did anybody rate somebody like Goldfinger or any of the Blofelds really low?
Yes.
Okay.
Goldfinger, no. Goldfinger was literally top 3 across the board, I think. Maybe 1 or 2 4s or 5s. Okay, so we had obviously Charles Gray's Blofeld was quite low in some. Yeah. There was some Pleasance Blofeld, so around the middle mark, around the 12th, 13th
really?
thing.
Okay.
There wasn't even top 5. And with Savalas, we had some that he was clearly in the top 3, top 5, and then 1 or 2 others where he was a bit further down the list. But
do you know what's interesting? Like when you read the original Fleming description of what Blofeld looks like, it's nothing like Donald Pleasance's Blofeld at all. Like it's closer to Telly Savalas because I can't remember the description off the top of my head, but I remember he's quite a burly, kind of tough dude, quite tall, and all that kind of stuff, which you just don't. When you think of Blofeld, you just don't think of that at all. But like we've said before, Telly's Blofeld is definitely a physical kind of presence, isn't he? That in a fist fight, he's going to handle himself well, whereas the other Blofelds, perhaps not.
No.
So that's interesting, man. Goldfinger is ultimately the ultimate Bond villain, then, by the looks of things.
So I'm going to quickly race through them all again. Okay,
cool.
Just as a recap. So in 25th place, we have Gustav Graves. 24, Brad Whitaker. 23, Elliot Carver. 22, Dominic Green. 21, Aris Christatos. 20, General Orloff. 19, General Koskov. 18, Karl Stromberg. 17, Kamal Khan. 16, Blofeld from Diamonds Are Forever. 15, Alec Trevelyan. 14, Electric King. 13, Hugo Drax. 12, Raul Silva. 11, Emilio Largo. 10, Max Zorin. 9, Dr. Kananga. 8, Fran Sanchez. 7, Francisco Scaramanga. 6, Le Chiffre. 5, Rosa Klebb. 4, Dr. No. 3 Blofeld from Honor Majesties, 2 Blofeld from You Only Live Twice, and 1 Mr. Auric Goldfinger.
That's a really solid list. You know what? As much as I love Le Chiffre, it's one of those things where when you see who's above Le Chiffre, it's like he deserves to be in 6th place, I think. In the kind of the grand scheme of things. But yeah, that's interesting. And you know, like you said, if there's anybody at home screaming into their iPods right now, going, "That's not fair," you know, Gustav deserves to be at least top 15. Then join the conversation. Come and join in on the JamesBondRadio.com website, and then you know, we'll do an updated list if we get more in.
Definitely.
But there you go. Somebody who deserves an honourable mention actually is JBL listener Hugo Herrera. Now, a little while ago, he posted on Facebook his Bond rating system, and he said, congratulations, guys, for another great episode. Here's my system to rate Bond villains based on 4 parameters: iconicness, performance, scheme, and meanness. Highest being 5, lowest being 1. The sum gives the position on the table. Sorry, I'm an engineer. And he's done much like what you've done, where he's basically created a spreadsheet with all the films and the villains. And
sometimes that's what you have to do.
And I just love it. It really makes me laugh. Like you can just imagine. Like I just picture you sitting at home, getting all your bits of paper out and writing down and making notes, and just really putting some time and effort into these charts, which is what Hugo's done. And funnily enough. I won't read out the whole list. Obviously, you can see it on Facebook if you go back far enough. His last position was Gustav Graves, and his number 1 position was Goldfinger. So
could you do his top 5?
His top 5. Okay, so top 5. He was more intense than us, and he did Never Say Never Again as well, which we didn't do. Okay. So at number 5 is Maximilian Largo from Never Say Never Again,
which is a very good villain actually. Very good villain.
Number 4 is Dr. No. 3 is Rosa Klebb. 2 is Blofeld from Majesties, and number 1 is Goldfinger.
There we are. So no Pleasance in that one.
No, where is Pleasance? Where is he? He's whoa, he's way down. So what's that? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14th, I think, if I've counted that correctly.
There we are.
So interesting. But weirdly, the kind of the bottom 10 are more or less exactly what we had in our list. So so interesting, The Bond villain rating system is a solid one. Good stuff.
Well, cheers, Hugo. Thanks for sending that in. It's good stuff.
Absolutely. So there we have it. The people have spoken on the Bond villain rating system, and the results are a little bit surprising, but somewhat kind of expected at the same time. Yeah. So there's our little pre-title sequence out of the way. Let's roll the theme tune.
Who are you?
My name's Bond. James Bond.
Bond. James Bond. Bond, what do you think you're doing?
Keeping the British end up, sir.
Welcome to James Bond Radio. News, reviews, and discussion of all things 007.
Pussy.
As you can see, I have no problem with female authority.
Oh, pipe down, 007.
You expect me to talk?
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Okay, good stuff. So, what's been happening in the world of Bond this week then, Chris?
Well, there's not been a lot in the terms of sort of Spectre, and the whole speculation might be a little slim this week. The main reason being that quite a few people heard Daniel Craig had a knee injury and he had to have surgery on that. But there was also actually a planned schedule break for Spectre while they're in between sort of shooting different locations and stuff. So part of it was pre-planned and part of it is Craig's sort of, just recovering. So it's a little less sort of Spectre news, but in terms of what we have sort of heard, there was something that Christoph Waltz came out, which we had a little chat about. But basically,
Christoph Waltz came out?
He did, yeah.
That's news to me. I didn't hear about that one.
It's a bit like Raoul Silver, isn't it? But basically, he come out saying that he's not Blofeld. Now, some people are going, what? That's just crazy. How could he not be Blofeld? Some people are going, yeah, smoke and mirrors. Some people are going, he's paid to say that and what have you. So what's I know what your opinion is, but what is your opinion on that?
My opinion is this. I think that 2 things have happened here, right?
Yeah.
One, the headline I remember reading on the article was, Christoph Waltz is definitely not Blofeld, right?
Really? There was a definitely
That was the headline. However, when you actually read what the dude actually said, was he
Yeah.
says, my character's name is Franz Oberhauser. I don't think, unless I've been silly and not read things properly, I don't think he ever actually said, I'm definitely not Blofeld. I think he just said,
Right.
my character is Franz Oberhauser, which could be true. It's one of those things. But
Well,
I
it is
think,
true. We know what his character's name is, and it is true.
there you go. But I feel like it's just all smoke and mirrors, and I think they've got to be careful, man, because it could backfire, like the whole Star Trek thing with Khan and all that kind of stuff with this big reveal. Maybe there is an actor on board who is playing Blofeld who appears at the very end, who's not Christoph Waltz, and there is this big twist at the end, and we'll go, oh my god, I didn't see that coming in a million years. But let's just think back to things like Skyfall, for example, in the sense that Eon aren't that good at keeping secrets, are they? Do you know what I mean? It's like, the Skyfall title release leaked days before and all that kind of stuff. And I just feel like if there was something like that, we'd have heard about it by now. It would have come out.
Like the teaser, just watch the teaser. That kind of tells you, doesn't it? I mean, if you're absolutely right in terms of there is another Blofeld and it's not Christoph Waltz and he comes at the end, that's fine because Waltz's character is going to be immense no matter what. It's going to be amazing. Yeah. He could be the head of Quantum. You never know. But he's obviously, we're pretty sure who he is. So that's fine. I think you're right. I think it's just a case of smoke and mirrors. Best not to say anything. But I don't think it'll backfire because they're not making a huge big thing about he isn't Blofeld. It's just, that's just silly journalism.
I think it's more the press making a big thing about that rather than them.
Of course it is. Well,
like
that's
we
what they
said
try
before,
and do, isn't it?
that image of him all in shadow, who else is he going to be? And I feel like if that is a trick and he's not Blofeld, it's just going to fall a bit flat. And it will just be like, stop it. Make him Blofeld because he's clearly the man for the job. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. But I think we'll be fine.
Yeah.
So in other news as well, we talked a little bit about previously the whole absolute nonsense about Roger Moore being a racist, the whole Idris Elba thing. But interestingly, Yaphet Kotto, who played Dr. Kananga, obviously in Live and Let Die, he's, I was going to say come out again, I'll see if I can use a different phrase. He's been quoted as saying that James Bond shouldn't be black. Now, he's a guy who, around the time of Live and Let Die, he was very pro the black movement, obviously, as you would be. So he's totally sort of, well,
what he said wasn't it? He said that rather than trying to take parts that were, written for a white man or whatever, that they should be inventing new parts and for black actors and stuff, which is a fair enough point. Without beating a dead horse, I think my whole thing with Idris is the fact that he is a sexy dude and he's got that Bond charisma. And
You've got something hard for him, haven't you, Tom?
I certainly do, man. I think I'm going to come out in a minute. But like the thing is with that is I feel like if you're going to cast a black actor as Bond or whoever, don't just do it for the sake of it. Like that would be silly.
Course.
Do it I would, for example, say they cast the next Bond and it was, I don't know, David Beckham decided he wanted to become an actor and they're like, we've cast David Beckham as James Bond. I'd be like, fuck off, no way. But compare that to Idris. I'd be like, yeah, Idris is the man. He'd be able to do it really well. Do you know what I mean? I would rather have that. Somebody who is better suited for the role rather than just, their background or their race or where they come from or whatever. Do you know what I mean? You know what I mean? But it's like, if David Beckham turned up as James Bond, I'd be like, this is going to be shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he would fit the profile of Bond more than Idris Elba would be.
I see what you mean.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of my argument for the whole thing. And I see it from sort of all the angles. I can totally understand people saying no. I can totally understand Yaphet's point as well. So it makes total sense. But yeah, I feel like this thing is just dragged on and on and on.
It is. That is going to be the last we mention any of it. Okay, we don't need to mention any more because it is all just silly nonsense. But okay, so there we go. So moving on. Shoot to Kill, fantastic book, which we both read and we interviewed Steve Cole, the author, is now available to pre-order in the States over in America. Now, does that? I'm assuming that's Canada as well.
I think, yeah,
I'm not
North
sure.
America. It's said, but yeah, to bear in mind, it's actually an ebook release. So it's out on Kindle and all those kinds of things. It's not an actual physical release.
So it's not a hard copy yet.
No, not yet. But there's
Just
like a new cover for it and all that kind of stuff, which I don't think it looks as good as the original.
I haven't
cover,
seen the cover for the.
Yeah,
US.
you know,
What's it like?
you know, the original one has like the Zeppelin at the top and Bond kind
Yeah.
of jumping down and the big pistol on the front cover.
That's
This
it.
one just kind of says "shoot to kill." There's like a bullet hole in the O, in one of the O's, I
Yeah.
think, of shoot, and it's just like a set of lights, like movie lights, kind of set up shining
Okay.
down.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I've always felt that actually. Like I feel like a lot of the US books, the covers just sort of leave a bit to be desired compared to the English ones. It's weird.
I've
that.
always wondered why they have different ones anyway. Like if one is brought out in the UK and it does well and it looks good and people say, oh wow, that's a really nice cover, why change it? I know there's meant to be different styles and different tastes, but you know, if you've got a good book cover, you've got a good book cover.
Yeah, completely.
I've always been a bit surprised by sometimes that
especially
happens,
when
but-
it's definitely a step down. Like again, I've seen like some of the Raymond Benson books, some of the John Gardner books and stuff. The US covers were just like, why would you do that? Like the original one that came out looks way better than that. But there we go.
Strange.
So there we go. For those of you who haven't over in the States or North America in general who haven't read Shoot to Kill yet, you've got an opportunity to do so now on ebook. Though obviously you can always kind of order it from Amazon.co.uk and get it shipped over anyway if you want the hardcover version. Now I went to the pictures the other day, Chris. I went to see a little movie. I just on
What was
a
that
whim.
called?
I went to what was it called now? Russell Crowe's new one. I was on a whim. I thought I'm going to go watch a movie, and I went and watched that one. It had Russell Crowe in it, and it had Olga Kurylenko in it. That's kind of why I chose it, to be honest with you. The Water Diviner. That's what it
Nice.
was called.
Oh, okay.
And
Any good?
it was all right. It was a solid movie. Good performance from Olga there. I was thoroughly impressed.
Nice.
But what really piqued my interest is during the trailers, there was a new Western that's come out called The Salvation, which I believe is actually a Danish film. It came out last year in Denmark, and it's now getting more of a general release. And it stars Mads Mikkelsen. He's the main character. And it also stars Eva Green.
Wow.
And it also stars Jonathan Pryce. So there's a Bond triple threat going on in there.
That is good stuff.
I've got to tell you, the trailer looks rad, man. It looks like a really, really good movie. So I think that's definitely worth a watch. So it's The Salvation.
The Salvation. And is it a Western that's set in Denmark? Because I can't really see Westerns in a Denmark landscape.
No, absolutely
in a Danish landscape.
I don't know. I didn't. I imagine it's probably about a Danish character, perhaps traveling to the Wild West or something like that. I didn't really pick up too much. I was too busy going, look, it's Mads Mikkelsen and it's Eva Green. They were both in Casino Royale. To people around me who didn't really care, but there you go.
There we are. Sounds good though. We'll have to check it out.
Absolutely,
Definitely.
good stuff.
Good
So I suppose we should say this week that we don't really need to do the spoiler alert thing this week because we haven't got anything to talk about Spectre. It's all been a bit quiet for the last couple of weeks. So
yeah. It's basically, there is a little bit, well, there's not a huge bit. Basically, like I mentioned, so Daniel Craig, he's had this, I think it's arthroscopic surgery on his knee or something. He's had to take a 3-week break from filming. So obviously the filming itself, they've taken a big break for that. The Mexico scenes, which we sort of mentioned last time, they're all in the bag. That's all done. But we can say now that Daniel is back filming. He's literally, in fact, he's by the time this podcast comes out, he'll have been filming for a couple of days, so that's really, really good.
Very nice.
Good news that he's back. And obviously in the coming weeks we know that the main sort of location shoot they're going to be doing is Morocco, which will take place in June, and we know they're going to be filming in Hawija, Tangier and Urfod. I think a couple of those were from Living Daylights. And apologies for the pronunciation.
I was just going to say, nice work, dude, but rather you than me. So Tangiers, that's an old school 80s Bond location. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. I'm happy actually because I think one of the things about Skyfall was that most of it was set in the British Isles, and there was that one little bit at the beginning, obviously where he's enjoying death, where he goes to an exotic location, but obviously the pre-title sequence. But this time we've got some in London, we've got some Mexico City, we've got some Morocco and all that kind of stuff. So he's a bit more well traveled this time. I think that's a good sign.
Get the sort of tropical and lush locations back. It would be nice to see that one. It would
Absolutely,
be good, definitely.
yeah.
It's a good visual feast for the eyes as well when you see the blue skies and the lovely places you want to go on holiday and stuff like that. But anyway, we'll see how it turns out.
A visual feast for the eyes.
There we are. Okay, so other news in terms of film news, actually, I don't know if you ever used to watch it, but I was quite a big fan. Did you ever watch Spooks?
Do you know what?
British TV.
Yeah, I've never watched Spooks, and it's always been one of those things where I've thought to myself, I should probably watch that, and I just never have for some reason.
Over in the States, over in and Canada, it's called MI5. Over here, it's called Spooks. It's basically about MI5 dealing with terrorists in the UK and stuff like that. Now it was actually it went on for 10 series, so that it played for a long time. The cast was always good. It was always good hooks and thrills and stuff. But they've now actually made a feature film version called Spooks: The Greater Good. Now, Peter Worth is sort of the main guy who is in the TV series. He's back in it. There's Kit Harington, who's from Game of Thrones.
The King's Bastard.
Yeah, indeed. I think he's kind of like the main guy in it in terms of sort of thing. And there's also Lara Pulver, who was in the TV series Fleming we reviewed, and she's also in Sherlock as well. And she's a great actress. So nice. I'll be looking forward to that. The trailer looks really good. So you might. I think it will be something that you can watch without having to have seen the TV series before. So, and I think you'll watch it. It'll be good, interesting to see what
good
you
stuff.
think.
Yet another spy film coming out in 2015.
Yeah, loads,
it's
isn't
like
there?
Spy mania from the 60s all over again this year. That's
It
good.
is, yeah.
We've got a lot of spyage, a lot of espionage to look forward to in the cinema this year. It's good stuff. Cool. So on to some listener messages. First up, we heard from JBR listener Owen Ling, who had this to say.
Hello, my name's Owen Ling. I'm an avid listener to the James Bond Radio. I think it's a great show. I really enjoyed your Man with the Golden Gun podcast. One thing that could be noted is that the concept of Bond seeing the mirror reflection and is just as good an assassin as he is was also emulated in future Bond pictures, two of the better ones in my view, like License to Kill and GoldenEye. And I suppose Skyfall also emulated that as well. Pure, unadulterated Fleming, which started very early on in the Casino Royale novels. Keep up the good work, men, and thank you very much. Hope you had a good birthday, Tom.
Okay, good stuff. Glad to hear you enjoyed the Man with the Golden Gun, Owen. It's one of those things, isn't it, where a lot of people, again, like we said in the review, a lot of people put this one down. And I think when you revisit it and you look at it with fresh eyes, it is sort of, you can see that it gets a harder rap than it perhaps deserves.
Yeah.
But yeah, keep up the good work, boys, men. I like that.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. We've
like
graduated. We're not boys anymore.
It sounded like he was in having a beach party in Thailand. Maybe he was on James Bond Island rocking a rave or something like that.
Maybe
it sounded
he was.
pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sounded happening.
But there you go. But
Cheers, Owen.
Thanks, Julie Cool, Owen. Next up, we had an email from JBR listener John Mitchell, who says, "Hi, Chris and Tom. I was lying awake in bed last night with a difficult question on my mind. I found myself thinking about Blofeld's Volcano Hideaway. Does it have a canteen? If so, what sort of meals could you get there? It has been bugging me all day. By the way, does anyone know the name of Blofeld's pussy? All the best, John Mitchell." So there we go.
Some interesting questions there.
Yeah, John's pondering the bigger questions in life right there, some of the more important issues in day-to-day life.
Do you think it was keeping him up at night as well?
Well, clearly. I mean, that's why he was compelled to write in.
That's exactly something that I would do as well.
Yeah. While you're making your charts of your villains and rating them. Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because when you look at a hidden volcano base, there's got to be some of those standard amenities that one would need to work. Where are the toilets, for example? Where's the kitchen? Where do the henchmen sleep? That kind of stuff, and you never hear about that in the film. So that is a somewhat interesting question. So have you got any thoughts on that, Chris?
Well, I guess okay. So let's start with the food question. Initially, straight away when I thought about it, I thought volcano, flames, flame grilled Whopper, or some sort of steak or burger. I thought, and then I thought, well, actually, what if the whole reason? This is literally the whole reason that Ernst Stavro Blofeld decided to place his base in a volcano in Japan was his fondness of sushi.
Well, it's funny you should say that, actually, because I was having a skim read through Fleming's Thrilling Cities recently. That book, I don't know if you've ever read that, but it's basically like a book Fleming wrote, just writing about his travel experiences. So it's a factual book. It's not fiction. And in it, when he describes his trip to Japan, he talks about sushi, and it kind of reflects on how, like, you know, how one of the things that made Bond so popular is he went to all these amazing locations and people didn't travel so much in those days. So it was like, you know, wow, seeing all these amazing places. In the same way that the way he describes sushi in the book is kind of like as if nobody had ever heard of the stuff before. And it's really funny how, you know, I suppose back in those days, it wasn't a thing that anybody really ate all that often in the West. Yeah. So maybe you're right. Maybe Blofeld had a penchant for a bit of sushi.
Yeah, who knows? I think the cat would have obviously been up for that as well.
That's
so maybe
very
it was, you know, both of them would be up for it.
Two birds with one stone,
him. I could picture him eating sushi. Actually.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. And maybe that's it. Maybe he's more fond of his cat than we actually realise, and that's why he goes to Japan, because there's an abundance of sushi and he can eat it, and also the pussycat can eat it. Yeah,
I can just imagine the cat sitting on his lap. A little bit for you, a little bit for me. You know, they're both got their little bits of sushi, watching the TV or something like that, and just chilling out. You know, the guards are all downstairs doing their thing. He's in his high back chair. He's got a nice monitor, watching the birds fly by into his volcano and out again. He's just eating sushi with the cat.
Sounds quite peaceful. Do you think they've got like it would work in the same way like a school canteen would, where you'd queue up with your tray and you'd have a dinner lady kind of spoon it onto your plate. Can you imagine Blofeld in the queue there with getting his grub on?
Well, I think maybe he wouldn't, but I can easily see his minions in their white, red and yellow uniforms all lining up to get their food. That has to happen. Yeah. That's got to happen. It does. I think it must do.
Good point.
Maybe Irma Bunt was the dinner lady, but we didn't actually get to see her in You Only Live Twice because she was behind a counter giving out food all the time.
She fits the dinner lady mould, absolutely.
She does, yeah.
And in the secondary question there is the name of Blofeld's pussycat. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do indeed. Do you have any thoughts at all, first of all?
Mr. Bigglesworth is the best I can come up with.
well, that's a good one. I mean, it basically is, isn't it? In all the films, it's never mentioned. So he says sort of, look what the cat dragged in diamonds, you know, when Tiffany Case is brought into the car, and but he never mentions the name. But now, I managed to find like a link to a picture of Blofeld with the said cat on his lap, and the header was Blofeld and Solomon the cat.
Interesting.
Now, it could be, and I'm pretty sure that it is, that the cat itself was called Solomon, so that was the cat's real name. But why not have Blofeld's cat actually called Solomon in the film as well? Even though obviously you don't hear it, but why not? That could be a thing.
That kind of works for me, that kind of name, because Blofeld wouldn't give him a cute name, would he? Like Mr. Fluffy Paws or something like that. It wouldn't work.
Tiddly Piddles.
And Solomon is like a classic name that I could see.
Yeah. It's quite a strong name, isn't it? Solomon.
Yeah, I wonder whether we're going to have to do some more research on that. We're going to pass that out to the JBR listener army and see if we can track down the name of Blofeld's pussycat. Interesting. So if we can find some more sources on the Solomon thing, maybe that is it. Yeah, interesting.
That would be quite cool. The other alternative, which it probably could get rather confusing, is that perhaps the cat is also called Spectre. In From Russia with Love, you remember when he's talking to Rosa Klebb about the parallel with the Siamese fighting fish, and then he basically says at the end, and like Spectre, he strikes, and at that time, basically gives out the fish and gives it to the pussycat, and the pussycat's almost up at the.
He could be referring to two things there. He could be referring to Spectre, the organisation, or he could be referring to his pussycat, because at that moment it strikes on the fish.
Yeah, and
you
then
might
he
have
gets
hit
to
upon
eat the
something
fish.
there.
Yeah, maybe. I think I prefer the Solomon idea, but yeah, so that's all I could come up with.
Well, what we'll have to do is when Spectre comes out, if the pussycat makes an appearance, we'll have to just look at the little collar and just see if we can make that name on
just
that.
Zoom in on extra high definition and see what we can find.
We can make that shit happen. We did the whole brightening up his face in the trailer and all that kind of stuff. Like, never underestimate the Bond fan army. We'll make it happen, no doubt. Next up, we had an email from Austin Madding, who says, "Greetings from the States, gents. Love the podcast. I'm currently getting caught up. Growing up in Kentucky, most of my favourite hero movies have been split among Batman movies and some of the best westerns. But Bond took it to a whole new level. Damn right. I'm also an independent filmmaker, so I find some of the trivia bits fascinating in terms of little details about production of the older Bond movies. I've heard a lot of talk already about Craig's successor once he steps down, and I have a very passionate idea on this subject. Like I said, I'm currently getting caught up, so if this name has already come up, apologies. In case you haven't seen it, there's a brilliant indie flick that made waves at last year's Sundance Festival called The Guest. It's a fantastic genre breaker that's styled after 80s thrillers and John Carpenter films. The main character, a dark and terrifyingly violent character, is played by a fantastic actor from Downton Abbey named Dan Stevens. Now I have several people that I would love to see play Bond, but Stevens has every bit of the quiet presence and magnetism that Connery had, combined with Craig's ice eyes stare. Once Craig steps down, I think Stevens could be old enough to step up and really nail this role. All the best, Austin. Thoughts, Chris?
Well, I've heard that name bandied about before, actually, Dan Stevens, and back then, and also after hearing this message as well, I've had a look. I haven't actually seen the film The Guest, but I think I will actually. I'm intrigued to see how he comes across. I'm not I haven't really seen Downton Abbey, so I don't know anything from that. And I guess that role would be slightly different to his interpretation of Bond, I'd imagine. But I've seen the photos of this guy. He's a handsome dude. He keeps himself trim. He's not like full on bulk, but he's proper. He is ripped. He does the action scenes. He does the martial arts. He does the guns. You could tell he'd be good with the ladies. And what I really liked about him is you can tell that he's not quite old enough yet. He's got that sort of face where he kind of still looks early 30s, whereas I still think Bond needs to look late 30s. I mean, Fleming always said around 38, didn't he?
Yeah.
Something like that. And I think to me, Dan Stevens, although he might be that age, I think he still looks quite a little bit younger. But I think, or if not, then maybe mid-30s. But I think it's good timing for this guy that, you know, we know Danny Boy is going to do probably at least 2 more. And I think that's a really good shout. I mean, I'm purely basing this on visuals, as I haven't actually seen the guy act. So that's the next thing I'm going to do. But yeah, I think that's a great shout, Austin.
Here are my thoughts. I've also never seen Downton Abbey, never really watched it. Now, when you look at photos of this dude, be careful, because there are some old ones that would make you go, "What the fuck?" as soon as you see them. Like for this one, he is in the right outfit, but I feel let's just have a look. But that doesn't scream James Bond to you, does it?
No.
However, that was a few years ago now. If you look at him now, he's obviously been on the treadmill and pumping to iron, and that's more what he looks like these days. Yeah,
that's a lot closer look, isn't it?
Do you know what? I've heard that dude's name come up a lot in terms of Bond, and I think that's a good shout, and I'm going to tell you why. Because people say Tom Hardy, no, he's too big. He's going to be too expensive for him. Yeah. People say Michael Fassbender, me included, love myself some Fass.
He would have been amazing.
He would have been absolutely perfect, but he's too big. He's going to be too expensive.
And he'll probably age as well, potentially.
Exactly. And the problem is I feel like this is what happens, right? If you're an actor who is a big enough name that you can star in movies and get them in the cinema and all that kind of stuff, then at that point you're probably too big to take on the Bond role, because A, they want somebody who's a bit cheap to begin with, at least, and B, typically speaking, with the exception of Roger, every actor has been somebody who's sort of been on the periphery. They've been working as a steady actor, but they're not that household name, you know, like Daniel had only really done Layer Cake, and that's what he was known for at the time. Had that bit part in Tomb Raider and stuff, and he was just one of those actors again who was on the sort of periphery, and certainly not what you would call a movie star. You wouldn't see his name on the top of the billboard for movies coming out. So I feel like your Hardys and your Fassbenders out of the question. Dan Stevens, however, fits perfectly into that mold, doesn't he?
He does indeed. I think it's one that we have to keep a watch on over the next sort of few years. The only person who I think it goes into that too big a star mold and might still have a chance of being Bond, I think, could be Henry Cavill.
That's a tricky one, isn't it?
Because he's Superman and now he's Man from U.N.C.L.E., but he's got the look, and maybe he will be too big, but he's one who I think could also
do you know what? I think it's a different world these days, right? Do you remember in the olden days, it would be like if you were famous for one particular role, that was it. Whereas now you have people playing more than one iconic character. Do you know what I mean? Like, for example, you had Christian Bale playing Batman, and then he was in that Terminator movie at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's like, even though that didn't do particularly well and it never carried on, but that was potentially another like series of movies that he could have been in. And that never really used to happen in the old days, with the exception of Harrison Ford with Indiana Jones and Star Wars.
Yeah.
But like nowadays, they tend to do that even more. Like the dude who plays Captain America was in the Fantastic Four a few years ago. Do you know what I mean?
That's right. Yeah.
And that doesn't seem to matter so much these days. So I wouldn't say no to Henry Cavill. I still feel that might be on the cards. With that said, he is Superman. And also Batman versus Superman will be out next year. And I think that movie's like destined to be humongous just because of what it is. And I feel like, you know, once that movie comes out, I think that would probably be the nail in the coffin on him being Bond. I think.
Probably right.
Because
Because
again, he's not that big a name despite being Superman, is he? He's not like a household name yet.
No, I agree with you. I think that's probably the same. But what I like is this Dan Stevens guy. It seems to be fitting the bill. Obviously we've got to watch the guy. But what I want to see is more in this sort of vein, rather than looking at people that are already hitting their 40s or whatever. This is a sort of age and the sort of person that we should be looking at. Obviously, we don't need to be looking anyway because we've got Craig for the next two, and so much can happen in 2, 3, 4 years. But you know, this is a sensible choice.
I think this is probably the first intelligent choice that we've come across so far, in the sense that his name has come up before, obviously, but I feel like he fits the bill perfectly because Eon, they always have that thing, don't they, where the first film out, they don't pay him very much, and then there's like a sliding scale depending on how many movies they do and all that kind of stuff. So I think Dan Stevens fits that bill perfectly. He wouldn't be too expensive. He's not too much of a name, and I feel like actors have that thing where they would take Bond as a stepping stone to be able to be one of those people that can carry their own movie. Daniel is a perfect example of that, isn't it? He was in like Cowboys and Aliens and all those kinds of movies after Bond.
That's right. Yeah.
So I think those are the kinds of people we've got to look at. People who are in their kind of early to mid 30s now, perhaps. Mid 30s being the top end of that bracket. Unless, and here's another thought, unless you've got kind of, in terms of reimagining the series with the next actor, if you think about it, as they've gone through the series, it's got gradually with each actor more fantastical and crazy, and then they bring it right back to the Fleming for the next guy to start with. It's happened every single time pretty much. However, Spectre does look pretty dark, doesn't it? I can't see it being too fantastical this time around. It looks pretty sort of down the line. So maybe after Daniel goes, they will have to do a complete reimagining. Maybe it will go and it will start the next actor with a more fantastical Bond, kind of like they are doing with the whole Batman thing. Do you know what I mean? Batman was very dark, and this one is going to be a more fantastical version of that. So maybe that's what they do. Maybe they'll have an older Bond and do that for a few movies. You never know what they'll do.
No, that's it. That's why it's so exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll find out when we find out.
We will indeed.
So do we have any other listener messages? Or
we had one more from JBR listener Bjorn from Sweden, who says, "Hi Tom and Chris, thank you for being the most entertaining podcast ever." Well, how about that?
Thanks, Bjorn.
Cheers, Bjorn. I often listen to you when I'm on the bus to work. You make me look like a fool when I'm sitting there giggling to myself. I love your humour. I'm 29 years old and I've been a fan of James Bond for as long as I can remember. My first memory of the movies is from when I was only a couple of years old and my dad let me see the pre-title sequences only. Then he sent me to bed and he stayed up watching the rest of the movie. Oh, I don't know how I feel about that. I feel that's a form of abuse, personally. For most people, being a Bond fan is not the coolest thing you can be. I often find myself in situations where it's best to keep a low profile regarding my Bond fandom. This brings me to an incident 20 years ago that I still remember so well. I have an older cousin that I really looked up to when I was young. One evening, she criticised the Bond movies, basically saying that they were shit. And I agreed. 10 minutes later, we talked to a couple of other persons, and yet again I agreed that Bond was silly, whereby my sister replied, "But I know you really like those movies." And for the third time that evening, I denied being a Bond fan. I remember I felt like Judas when he betrayed Jesus 3 times. Have you ever denied being a Bond fan? It would be fun to hear you discuss your experiences. Cheers from Sweden.
Wow.
Well, what do you think about that?
Well, there's some hard-hitting info there. First of all, let's go back to the abuse. Only letting someone watch the pre-title scenes. I mean, there is kind of poetry to that in a way, depending on what age they are. But it's almost like, I'm going to give you a little bit, I'm going to let you taste the sweetness, but then I'm going to take it away. But I mean, at least you get a lot with the pre-titles, so at least, that's a good way to hook people in. Just watch these, maybe. So that was interesting. Yeah, but denying being a Bond fan, what about you? Has that ever happened to you? Or
Well, to be honest with you, I think the older I get, the more...
you don't give a shit.
Yeah, that's totally what I was going to say. The more I just don't give a shit. Like, I've found in life, people will mock things like Bond or general geekiness, like especially if you're something like a Star Trek fan. That used to be the one. Like, if you were a Star Trek fan, you were like super geek, and girls wouldn't even come near you with a 10-foot barge pole or whatever. But times have changed, and here's my thoughts on it. Right?
Okay.
Geeks, no matter what it is you're into, whether you're a Bond fan or a fan of computer programming or something like that, right? If you're one of those geeks, then you are actually more interesting than most people, because there's nothing less interesting than those people who sit down a pub and sit there and just rip the piss out of everything and don't have any passions themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's nothing more kind of compelling to listen to when somebody's passionate about something and they want to talk about it and share that with you. And that passion rubs off on everyone around them, and it kind of inspires them to kind of look into something even more. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, completely, yeah.
Yeah. And I think bollocks to anybody that slags off Bond. There would have been a time in my life where I'd have probably played it down a little bit as well. And I might have been like, oh, well, I'm not going to say that I do a James Bond podcast because that's a bit too geeky. But I think bollocks to it. Damn right, I'm on a James Bond podcast. You know what I mean? It's brilliant. Fuck off.
I think now will be pretty hard to tell someone that you weren't a Bond fan. I mean, I completely agree. I remember when I was in college, speaking to a girl who I thought, wow, she's not bad. We're having a nice conversation, and I think we're having a drink or something like that. And the subject of going to cinema came up, and films, and eventually, obviously, I sort of mentioned Bond without saying too much. I was just like, oh yeah, look, the next one's coming out, whenever it was. And her response was, oh, Bond, yeah, they're a bit crap. And then straight away, literally, that's all I had to hear. And straight away I was like, oh, that is a shame. All right, yeah, I'll just go for lunch. And like literally, all I had to hear was that. Yeah. And then straight away, I was just no interest whatsoever. I was like, oh, yeah, see you later sort of thing. And then I went off, and that was quite funny. I do remember sometimes, like when you're super young, you don't give a shit anyway. So I think it's when you reach maybe your teens or you're in your early 20s and everyone wants to try and be cool, but they don't quite know what cool is, so they do whatever it is, and they try and fit in with the majority of people. And that's when you're at the stage where you might want to hide it or tone it down a bit. But think about it when you're young, how excited you are to watch Bond, how much like it makes you feel good, how you get the energy and the vibe off it. And like you get that when you're young, but we're also at that stage now, and probably have been for the last 5 or 10 years or something. And it's just that little area around your late teens and your early 20s where I think it affects people. And if it affects you, just go out, just forget about it. Just go out. Like, I completely agree with you. People that have no interests are the least interesting people in the world, aren't they? And that's obviously that's what it is. And especially people that just slag off other people or other things because they haven't got anything better to do. But that's
totally it. Like, for example, if you go down the pub or whatever, and there's some nerd down there who's sitting there debating who's the better captain of the Starship Enterprise, Captain Picard or Kirk, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people are like fucking geeks or whatever. But I bet you that conversation is more important and more passionate than some two numpsies sitting up there talking about fucking football or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think
you're probably right.
And there's actually a quote by Simon Pegg, who you probably know from, he was in the last Star Trek movies as Scotty and all that. You'll see him on TV, and Shaun of the Dead. That's obviously what he's most famous for.
Hot Fuzz and all that.
Hot Fuzz, all those movies.
Yeah.
And he says something which I thought sums it up perfectly. He says, being a geek is all about being honest about what you enjoy and not being afraid to demonstrate that affection. It means never having to play it cool about how much you like something. It's basically a license to proudly emote on a somewhat childish level rather than behave like a supposed adult. Being a geek is extremely liberating.
I like that. Sums it up. I think that's nice. It does indeed. Very well put, Simon.
Absolutely.
Sorry,
go on.
No, I was just going to say, like, counteracting the girl's story. There's as in this is going to sound quite bad, but I was having a drink with a girl quite recently. And,
get you.
And well, just having a drink. And basically, the subject came up. What you're interested in, and I mentioned a podcast, and I just think I was like, oh yeah, I'm a bit of a. I even said I'm a bit of a James Bond geek, do the podcast and whatever, and they're like a bit, oh well, really, and but you do that now, don't you? I think it's just the way it is. I think it is age. It's a lot to do with age. I think
it's a lot to do with age, and at the same time, the geeks have inherited the earth, haven't they? In the sense that you look at Facebook, the biggest website on the planet almost, and it's Mark Zuckerberg is a massive geek at the end of the day who spent his college days sitting on his computer tapping away. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, it's just, that's how the world is these days. I think people have realized that kind of geekdom is the way forward. And I feel like it's a lot more open these days than it was before. Do you remember when you were a teenager, girls being into things that were geeky, like, things like the Hunger Games or Lord of the Rings or whatever would just be a complete non-entity. Do you know what I mean? Or if they were, they would hide it very well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas now it seems way more open. It's I think it's a good thing. Bring it on. I celebrate
100%.
it.
Look at all the Comic-Con things we mentioned before and events. I think, and obviously social media and the internet has helped that hugely, because imagine those days, it was like you wouldn't know how many other people had the same interest as you, would you?
Yeah.
But now we can get online, like the podcast, like the websites and what have you, and you can engage with people and
bringing people together.
Ooh, yeah. But I think it's brilliant, and long may it continue, basically.
So there you go, Bjorn. We have spoken. Don't worry about it. And tell that cousin of yours to bugger off. As far as I'm concerned, that's my prescription.
Or just proudly stand in front of them and just go, guess what? I love Bond.
There you go. In your underpants, preferably.
Yeah, in your underpants with your hands on your hips, standing proudly, preferably with a 007 logo on your pants.
Yeah.
And you'll get a lot of respect that way.
There you go. Damn right. Good stuff. Yeah. So what's been happening on the James Bond Radio website this week, Chris?
Well, we've got some new news from our Station C correspondent, Linda Zhu, who I hope has recovered from the fact that Alec Trevelyan was only 15th in the Bond list, but I'm sure she's okay by now. I'm sure she's recovered. So, yeah, the latest news we've had is lots of interesting stuff. Obviously, we mentioned Christoph Waltz and Lion Bond, so we've gone through that. Danny Boy's been active. He's been busy promoting awareness for Mine Action Day. Now, this is good, and this is what I like. I like hearing about people who are in the spotlight and use it for good. You mentioned David Beckham earlier, and he does amazing stuff for UNICEF. Obviously, Roger's been doing UNICEF for years, and it's nice when stuff like this happens. And obviously, Danny's kind of interested in helping people affected by mines. And it's
so this is landmines, isn't it? This isn't like taking a pickaxe.
It's not like a View to a Kill mine. No, it's not like It's more like landmines from Die Another Day in the demilitarized zone, and not the mine from A View to a Kill. Just to relate it in a Bond way. So obviously that's excellent stuff that he's doing that. Also, Honor Blackman gave her thoughts on Daniel Craig's interpretation of Bond, and she said he's probably the best actor to have ever played Bond, which is interesting. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, usually when a Bond girl speaks like that about who's the best Bond, usually they're pretty loyal to their Bond, aren't they?
Yeah.
Like, for example, Samantha Bond always says that Pierce was her Bond and all that kind of stuff, and she never even dreamt of staying on his Moneypenny after that, if that had been offered, kind of thing. So it's interesting that she said that, probably the best actor to have ever played Bond. I think she said Sean Connery was the best Bond. Okay.
But Daniel Craig was the best actor to have played Bond. So make of that as you will. I suppose because currently with the Craig stories, it's bringing the character into sort of territory that we haven't explored hardly at all before. With the Vesper and various other things. So maybe that's what she's getting at, is that Daniel's showed lots of different sides to his potential acting thing. But she did say Connery is the best Bond, but Craig is the best Bond actor.
Interesting.
Interesting point. Recently, we saw Pierce Brosnan was a film, I think, with what was it? We mentioned one last time anyway, but he's now got another one on the way, which is called Survivor. Now, this one is with Mila Jovovich, And yeah, I haven't actually seen the trailer for it, but it looks like another potential action.
I had a little
film.
watch. Yeah, it was. He's a baddie in this one. Funnily enough,
Oh, wow, okay,
he's like
good.
a hitman who's after Mila.
Yeah.
And it looks kind of like your typical kind of hitman based action flick. Not a million miles away from like the November Man, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting point actually, because we had a news item on a recent episode about the November Man being on UK
Netflix. Yeah.
And I had a look.
Did you have a look?
I can't find it anywhere, so I don't know what's going on there.
No.
So maybe
it's
it'll show
got
up
a
soon.
release date that's coming out soon. I don't know.
Yeah.
I still don't understand why it wasn't in the cinema, why we can't get access to
Weird.
it. I mean,
One of those things.
very strange. So that was the news from Station C, which was
Good
great.
stuff.
So cheers for that, Linda. We also had a post on the website from Matthew Grice, which is the lost Bond song, I Will Return. Which was a good bit there. Did you ever read of that one?
I did, yeah. So it's basically he's gone through. I mean, what he's done is he's done some next level geekery, kind of like what you did with the villains and the rating system there, where he's basically there's like a melody that happens in the Die Another Day score, which suggests that perhaps at some point there was maybe a theme song that David Arnold had written that had weaved into the score, and then she, who should not be named, comes along, barges in and ruins everything with her song. And then but leaving that melody still weaved in, so it's an interesting read, and he's basically put examples of the music with kind of YouTube links throughout, so it's well worth a read from there. Old Gricey's back on the blog.
Cheers, he is. Cheers, Gricey. Good for that one.
Absolutely right.
So I think that's all the website news. So I think it's time for
Bond trivia. Nice. That sounded like a low rumbling fart, your version.
Well, that's exactly what I was going for, funnily enough. Bond facts, bro. Low rumbling fart. Bond trivia, rather. Okay, so I think you should go first, Bond trivia this week.
Okay. I originally had a trivia question, which you so rudely robbed from me, which I wasn't allowed to use.
Because I had the same question. Which would have been quite funny. But anyway, yeah.
I stumbled across this fact today, and I went,
right.
I can't believe I didn't know that. It's one of those where I was like, if you'd have asked me this question, I wouldn't have had a clue, and I would have been nowhere near what the answer is. So, right, okay. Christopher Wright, prepare yourself, because I might get you this time.
Right.
My Bond trivia question of the day is, what does the R in Albert R. Broccoli stand for?
Albert R. Broccoli. It's a good question. I remember we had one about Daniel Craig, and his middle name was Rowton, and not a lot of people knew that.
No.
But that's a good question. It's a good question.
I'll give you a hint. It's not Rupert.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so my Bond trivia question for this podcast is, now, in which Bond films do we see a lovable grey friend, the elephant? So in which James Bond films do we see an elephant, and what are they?
Okay, I can think of 1, 2, 3. I can think of 3. So I'm gonna mull that over, and as always, we're going to reveal our answers towards the end of today's episode. But that's a good question. Good stuff.
Interesting.
So on to the main topic of today's episode. As we said at the beginning, we're doing a 2-parter on the collectors of Bond. These are the people who they buy the props or the replicas or whatever, and amass a collection of Bond-ness memorabilia or whatever it is. So our first guest in today's episode is Mr. David Zaritsky from thebondexperience.com. And if you're a Bond fan, which you probably are if you're listening to this,
maybe
you've more than likely seen this dude on YouTube or on his website, reviewing the clothes of Daniel Craig's Bond or different bits and bobs. So without further ado, let's chat to Mr. David Zaritsky. So we'd just like to welcome to the show Mr. David Zaritsky from thebondexperience.com. Welcome to the show, David.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me.
No worries. First things first, I've got to say, what an amazing chair and what an amazing backdrop you've chosen for this interview.
Well, I had this shipped in just for your podcast. So,
very nice. I'm impressed. I'm impressed.
That's what we like to hear, isn't it, Tom? That's what we like to hear. People that go the extra mile.
Yeah. So if you're just listening to the podcast and not watching on YouTube, David's sitting in a rather fetching Blofeld "You Only Live Twice" style high-backed chair, which is really good. So as we always start with all our interviews, we're going to kick off with our 007 quickfire questions, just to give everybody an idea of kind of your taste in Bond, as it were. Sure. So my very first question for you, David, is what is your favourite Bond film?
I would have to say my favorite Bond film is probably Thunderball, just because it has a certain nostalgic connection to my father and, the way I was kind of brought into the whole Bond story. So definitely Thunderball.
Okay, so let's hear a little bit about that. What's the connection with your dad?
Oh my gosh, I feel like I should be on a psychiatry chair. Like many people, I had a very busy father growing up who was a successful businessman, but did not have a lot of time to throw the ball in the backyard with me. But the one kind of indelible memory I have is that he would watch James Bond films with me.
Nice.
So it was this really, really strong connection. I was brought up in the Roger Moore era, if you will, of new James Bond. But I remember seeing Sean Connery films on TV with him. So there was that really nostalgic connection. And sure enough, when I grew up, I'm probably trying to capture that father moment.
Yeah.
And it's just pulled me right back into James Bond again.
Very nice. Cool stuff.
That's actually very similar to my sort of childhood and upbringing a bit with my dad, and it was always a Bond film, sitting down to watch the Bond films, mainly on either VHS or on TV, and the Thunderball, funnily enough, is the first one that I remember of watching with my dad, so it's quite a similar experience of nostalgia there. It's good.
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember as a child clearly watching the underwater and just being so bored. I mean, it just was going on and it was like watching a fish tank. And then as I've grown up, I'm like savoring every single moment of it. I think I'm getting more patient as I grow older.
Very nice.
I like it. So, David, what would you say for question 2 is your favourite James Bond book?
My favorite book is, and like so many people, Casino Royale. I mean, it's just amazing. And I remember picking it up again as a young adult and just finding it remarkable that a poker game, cards, Baccarat could be just so interesting. His writing just being very quick, pulling you into there. Even the type of writing where you can almost smell a casino, the sweat and everything like that jumps out of the page. So Casino Royale.
Very
Good
nice.
answer.
That seems to be the most common answer we get to that question, isn't it, Chris?
I think it is. Yeah,
definitely. And I think there's a good reason why.
I'm going to try not to be a cliche through everything. Trust me.
Good stuff. Cool. Next question for you. What is, or who is, should I say, your favourite Bond girl?
Oh, I would say, it has to be Vesper, Evergreen.
Ah, very nice.
And I mean, just everything from kind of that strong-willed nature to, the snarkiness. I love that, to the sarcasm, to the way she looks. I mean, I love brunettes. So just the whole package.
Nice. Usually we have to, with people, split it into 2 categories, is the one who has the most strength of character and the one who just kind of, awakens your inner beast, so to speak. So if you have another category that you'd want to throw up there, or is it Vesper all the way?
She's best all around. I'm just going to have to give it to her on both of those columns.
Nice.
I like the way you phrase that, David. Very good.
Yeah. I'm being careful with my hand gestures.
Good answer there, Vesper. I mean, like you said, she's a great character and she looks at business as well. So superb. So question 4 then. Who is your favourite actor to have portrayed James Bond?
Cliche part 3. It's got to be Sean Connery. I mean, and it's interesting because I was brought up with Roger Moore, but now as an adult, looking back at Roger Moore, I love him as a character that he played, and as an individual, Roger Moore is phenomenal. But just seeing him not being able to kick over his waistline, it's tough for me to see him as Bond now, especially with the Daniel Craig portrayal, which, by the way, Daniel Craig's my second favorite because he seems like an assassin. He seems like he can kill you. And I've met him twice. And,
wow.
He is this kind of even imposing character when he walks into the room in real life. But Sean Connery has, it's almost like he's jumped out of the book, but he's got a really nice marriage of the movie too. He walks like a cat. I mean, people have even said that he walks like a panther, and he has this swarmy nature. He's pithy. Even the one-liners seem very real. He's just got everything to do with that. He's iconic in my mind.
Yeah.
Definitely. Damn right. I think for me with Roger, it's like I adore Roger. I absolutely love him. But then obviously you compare him to Sean and he's a completely different animal. And it's just, I think you just take Roger for what he is and you can't help but love him, even though, like you say, he's probably not the most physical, the most imposing of the Bonds.
Yeah, and I've equated. This is going to be, not so safe for work, but I've equated James Bond films and even James Bond actors to like pizza and sex. Even when they're bad, they're still good. So that's how I feel about all of them, quite frankly.
That's a good line to use. I like that. Very good.
So I think we should backtrack just a little bit there, because there was something you mentioned very briefly, which was you've met Daniel Craig twice. So let's hear about those meetings.
Yeah, one of them is okay. So he did a play, Betrayal, in New York City. So I was amongst a throng of people where he was kind of signing things, and we were videotaping it. And I have this as actually one of my video podcasts where he came out and we had a quick little chat, because I knew to capture his attention among hundreds of people, I had to drop a name of somebody that he knew personally that would kind of make him stop in his tracks. So I did that. I know one of the charities called SAFE that he works on, and one of the people that works very closely with him on that charity. So I said, hey, this person says hello, and he stopped and had a quick chat. That wasn't my big moment. My big moment with him was when I was in Tom Ford, the store in New York City, and I was doing some shopping there myself. And the gentleman who I connect with there, the manager of the store, as soon as I walked in, he goes, David, he's here. And I thought he meant Tom Ford. So I'm like, oh, wow, that's great. Tom Ford's here. And he goes, no. Daniel Craig's here. Now, mind you, it was me, all the salespeople, and Daniel Craig. There was nobody else in the store. Wow. So I'm and my wife. And I'm following him around like a puppy, but trying to ignore him and not stalk him and things like that. And he kind of glanced at me and he nodded and I nodded. And then finally, by the way, he was creating a pile of clothes, one for Rachel and one for him. I mean, he walked out with an unbelievable amount of clothes. So at one point, my wife's like, you got to do this. I mean, I know it's creepy, it's stalkerish. You got to go up and ask him for a picture or something like that. So I did. I walked up and I said, Daniel, this is going to seem terrible. Do you mind if I get a picture with you? And he looks at me and he goes, I'd rather not.
Oh, no.
Every organ in my body fell to my feet.
Yeah.
But here's the recovery. He actually said, and I said to him, I said, you know what? I appreciate that you're shopping. I totally get that. And he goes, you know what? I appreciate that. And he reached out, he shook my hand. We had a moment and then he left. And so I think the fact that I didn't force it upon him, or I didn't have my wife like steal a picture, hopefully bought me some respect.
It's a funny one that I've had a couple of moments in my life when I've met some people who are heroes of mine, and I've just melted into a blancmange on the floor, and it's so difficult, man. It really, really is. But yeah, I think you handled that well, man. You've come out with a positive ending to it. So that's.
I've got to tell you though, you know what happens, and it probably happened to you when you met, your celebrity connection. You think of a million things to say after the fact, like, oh, I should have said this and I should have done that. And but it happened and there it is. Yeah. Not pretty.
So you didn't comment on the his and hers jackets that he got for himself and his missus?
Yeah, that would have been too awkward. Or saying something like, now, mind you, this is going to really go over to the creepy side. I knew everything that he was wearing at the time. I knew all the brands. Helmet Lang, it was Scotch and Soda jeans, just because there's this whole, which I know we'll get into, there's this whole culture of, James Bond and clothing and stuff like that. That would have been really creepy. Like, oh,
you could have really freaked him out. You could have really freaked him out.
Damn it, I should have done that.
Just handed him a Bond Experience business card and be like, if you like clothes, you should check this out. Yeah.
We're following you.
Now, this next question is going to be a tricky one, if you can possibly nail it down. And the question is, what is, out of the entire series, your favourite Bond scene, if it's possible just to choose one?
Oh, yeah. You know what? It's just like a Rorschach test. So I immediately went to, it's a Pierce Brosnan, Tomorrow Never Dies, when he is driving the BMW with the little remote control Ericsson phone.
Nice.
I remember seeing that in the movie, and I was in my kind of mid-30s at the time. It's an amazing scene. And then when I became kind of a young executive and I started collecting movie memorabilia, I actually I purchased the screen use thing that he uses, the Ericsson phone. And so having the prop and then watching the scene and having the prop just over time has just created a moment with that scene. For sure.
That's awesome, man.
It's fun too. It's a fun scene.
Yeah. It's an interesting choice. It's not one that we've had before, but you're right. It's a scene that you could watch probably over and over just because it's got a lot of humour. It's got the action, and Brosnan, you can tell he's having a lot of fun when he's doing that scene, can't you?
Exactly. Yeah, and that's the whole thing with Brosnan. He's got this kind of, he has like a very fun attitude. I know people really, really just come on him like a ton of bricks right now after the Daniel Craig portrayal is almost like campy, and they call him pretty boy and things like that. I liked him as James Bond. I thought he was great.
Me too. I think that's the tricky thing, isn't it? Is when, especially after you have something like Die Another Day, and then you have something as amazing as Casino Royale that none of us thought Bond would ever be that great again. Or kind of, tread that ground again. It's difficult to I remember seeing Casino Royale and thinking, I think that's the best Bond film I've ever seen. And it's kind of ruined all the other Bond films for me because it was that good. As time's gone on, obviously, I've looked back and, of course, that's rubbish. But that's I think the knee-jerk reaction a lot of people have, isn't it?
It's true. That's true.
So on to the next question then. You might have pretty much answered this one already, but what would you say is your earliest memory of James Bond?
My earliest memory of James Bond, I think it's actually going to see Moonraker in the theater with my father. And it was, it was, I think I was maybe 9 years old, 10, if I do the math correctly. And, I was like every other kid that age in the late 70s, huge Star Wars fan. And I remember that my father had positioned it. I remember this so well, that hey, it's like Star Wars and it's like James Bond and it's like Star Wars and James Bond. So how could it be bad? And it wasn't, right? Because, Moonraker as a child is just magical. So I think that's the one that really stands out. And then there was a whole series of coming out of that movie and wanting to watch James Bond and finding them on TV, the Sean Connery ones, and then watching them with my father. So yeah, that's definitely a standout.
Very nice.
Wow.
Cool stuff.
It must have been good fun to have watched it in the cinema.
It was amazing.
So next question, and this is a kind of a double barrel one, because I know you're quite the well-travelled gentleman. Now, out of all of your Bond locations that you've visited, what is your favourite? And out of all the ones you haven't visited, what ones would you most like to go to?
That's a great question. My favorite thus far, it's a simple one, and you guys are going to laugh. You're going to say, yeah, I see it right outside my window. But definitely going to Whitehall, in that whole area where it's just so Bond, with MI6 and the building. I remember driving up to it and taking pictures on the bridge when I went to London, and it just looking around, I was like, this is James Bond. I mean, to me, London, out of all the beautiful places, Piz Gloria, you name it, London feels like Bond. I mean, you really, it has an aura about it. There's no other way to put it. There's an air about it that feels, especially to, an American, it feels like Bond. Everybody sounds like Bond, there's just a swagger to it. It was weird. When I went to London for the first time, obviously was not in the 60s, but everything feels like a little bit 60-ish, and James Bondish. So that's the one. But I got to tell you, to answer the second part of the question, Venice. I've never been to Italy, and I'm very excited to actually announce here that the Bond Experience is going on a trip in mid-May, for about 2 weeks, all through Switzerland, down into Venice, to all the Bond places, to Lake Como, Lake Gara, to Venice, all the way up to Austria, where we're going to take a tour of Solden, to the Spectre sites and things like that. So my wife and I will be doing copious amounts of podcasts. That's right, from all those different sites. So I'll get my
Dude,
buck.
that's going to be amazing.
It's going to be amazing. I cannot wait.
Yeah. cool
I
stuff.
take it there's going to be quite a few photographs and videos on location and stuff like that.
Tons. I mean, really. I mean, we're probably going to walk away with. We have 15 different locations we're going to. I would imagine there's probably going to be at least 7 or 8 podcasts just from those alone. So crazy.
Good stuff.
So
mate.
here's an interesting one, David. So you're going with your partner now. Is she a big Bond fan, and how does she mind your sort of fanatical obsession with Bond, or is she a part of that, or how does that work?
I was going to say
those are
she
all
must be
appropriate perks.
she must be pretty understanding.
She is understanding. She is super patient. I will tell you this: she's certainly not to our level of Bond fandom. I don't know too many people that are, but she likes the films. I mean, she genuinely gets excited about them. Now, here's the reality of it: Bond and my association with Bond and everything like that has taken us to amazing places. Amazing parties. I mean, we went to the premiere of Skyfall and sat in the same room, Royal Albert Hall, with the Prince. I mean, so it's like all those things are just absolutely amazing experiences. She loves those experiences. She loves when we talk about the Bond lifestyle. It's a finer lifestyle. It's, food and travel and drink and all those things. Has it ever gone over the edge? The reality is that my collection, for example, is relegated to a non-public part of the house, and we do that very purposely. I mean, you're in my home office right now, but if I was to travel with you on this Skype down to the lower bowels of hell that I call my collecting area,
The dungeon,
yeah, right. It's relegated, and we have a really good understanding. But she has never once, seriously, through all my collecting, said, "Ugh, Bond." She's been so good about it. Seriously, she's great.
Do you think because underneath that she knows if she did, the divorce would be on the cards possibly, or?
So the leverage. Well, no, and I've got to tell you, I mean, think about it. So Bond, and this is kind of jumping into it, I guess, but Bond, in my 40s, when I saw Daniel Craig walk out of the water in Casino Royale, and Daniel Craig's exactly my age, it motivated me to really get into exercise, to start working out, to get into P90X and all those things. So if anything, from her point of view, I think Bond has helped me body, mind, soul, therapy, all those different things. So
Awesome.
she's supportive.
Cool stuff.
A big smile on her face then. So the final quick-fire question then, David. This could be quite an interesting one. What would you say is the most Bondian thing you've ever done?
Swam with sharks.
Whoa.
Wow.
I don't even have to hesitate. Yeah. We in the Bahamas, we swam with sharks. It was the craziest thing. And I've always joked throughout my entire life, I knew how I was going to die. I'm going to be eaten by a shark. And maybe it was a Bond thing to say, but and then we swam with sharks, and it's one of those things where they drop the bait all the way to the base of the sea floor, so the sharks hopefully go there. But you are in the water swimming 15 feet above sharks, giant sharks. And it's just this one thought that if somebody pulls up the bait, you will be amongst them. But it's a very Bond moment.
So were you in like one of those cages, or were you literally? No way, dude.
I've got little floaties on and a mask and a snorkel, and I'm amongst 3 or 4 other people that their hearts are pounding, and you're just swimming with sharks.
Man, that's incredible. I think that outranks everybody else's most bonding experience. Wouldn't you say, Chris?
I think it probably does. Did you have like a chainmail suit on or anything like that?
That would have been great. I did not.
I'd want an entire suit of plate mail for that.
Yeah, and then I had this.
Wow, excellent.
Okay, so I think that gives everybody the idea of kind of your taste in the Bond universe, so to speak. So you're kind of best known, I guess, for the bondexperience.com website. So for the benefit of our listeners, just tell us a little bit about that, what the site is, what it does, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Bond Experience is a social site. It's all about sharing all the Bond fans out there certain experiences that they've lived through, like you were just talking about the shark experience. And I wanted to create a haven, if you will, where people can not only share their experiences, but read about other experiences, because I kept meeting people that said, oh my gosh, somebody that enjoys Bond as much as me, or somebody that's done this or done that, or, maybe, they live in Minnesota and they couldn't have that experience with other people. So it was a lounge, for want of a better word, where people could watch video podcasts, read blogs, and read contributions from other people about their Bond experience. And we've all been shocked about how much it's grown. I think we have something like 500,000 views on YouTube. We have another 500,000 on video, so we have over 1 million views. But now associated partnerships or brands have come out of the woodwork: Tom Ford, NPL, Omega, Heineken, Coca-Cola, and have then connected with us because they know that their brand is part of the Bond experience or the Bond lifestyle. So it's been all these like crashing of different people and integrations.
Awesome.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
It is fun. It is. And that's the one thing that I've always tried to maintain. And Danielle, my wife's been great about this, is not to turn this into a business. So what I do for my living, my day job, is I'm the president of a pharmaceutical advertising agency. And everybody says, David, what do you do that you travel so much? But I have an agency that does, work with Pfizer and BMS and all these pharmaceutical companies. My therapy, my hobby is James Bond. So it kind of puts it all in perspective that I think if it ever became a business, it would be a little lackluster to me, but this is fun.
It can taint things a little bit, doesn't it? When you do it for work, it can sort of take away the love of something a little bit. So I think that's probably a good choice to make.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, Tom.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
So for the Bond experience, you're well known as sort of a collector of many things, items and clothing and accessories. Now, within the actual Bond series, what would you say would be your favourite and least favourite outfits that James Bond has worn?
My favorite outfit that he's worn is probably in Casino Royale. It's when he goes to the Miami airport and he's chasing the tanker and he's wearing the Armani leather jacket and things like that. I love the Bond casual clothing. I know everybody goes back to the white dinner jacket or the Skyfall blue tuxedo, which I love too. But for some reason, the casual outfits, because they're very similar to how I would walk out of the house on a regular day, I love those buy-in because it makes Bond very approachable, very real, like he's an everyday guy that could kind of blend in. So that's definitely my favorite. My least favorite, this is almost a cliche, are the Roger Moore ones with the lapels and everything. I swear he could hang glide with some of those collars. To me, those are just, and again, it's a sign of the times. I'm sure the safari outfits were high fashion back then, but they just look a little crazy today.
Well, that kind of leads us perfectly into the next question, which is kind of when you look at the old school Connery movies and stuff like that. You look at, how he dresses in, say, Dr. No, for example, and I feel like that's a timeless look, isn't it? It's like that's never going to go out of style. Whereas Roger in the 70s is a bit of a different story. So do you think that style of dress might ever make a comeback, or do you think that's best left in the past where it perhaps belongs, as some people might say?
That's a great question. I would love for it to come back. In fact, Anthony Sinclair is the one that dressed, obviously, was the tailor who dressed Sean Connery in Dr. No and subsequent movies. And he had such a timeless look to his suit. And they still actually make the Conduit suit, which is the same type of suit, same cut. And you look at it today, I have some friends that have purchased one, and it looks great. You would never think like, oh, that's a 1962 style.
Yeah.
As much as I really like the Tom Ford style, it's very, very tight. I mean, it almost looks like it's kind of, shows off the muscle. I think it's going to really look dated. I mean, if you look at some of the outfits, even in Spectre, certainly in Skyfall, they look very tight on Daniel Craig. They look like it's puckering him a little bit.
It's funny you should say that, because that's the first thing I thought when I saw the first kind of teaser shots of him and stuff. I thought, hey, that suit looks too small for him. He looks too kind of burly and like he's going to burst out of it. And secondly, I thought his hair was too short as well, which is a common thing. So
totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree. In Skyfall, I think it looks much better in Spectre. I think it looked actually best in Quantum, his hair.
Yeah.
And for your listeners who haven't seen my video podcast, we actually have a video podcast of each one of the haircuts. So my barber I kid you not, one of the haircut videos has something like 68,000 unique views.
Wow.
And what they do is they bring in their phone and they show their barber the video of me getting a Skyfall haircut, or me getting the Quantum haircut, or the Casino Royale haircut, or I don't know what the hell I'm wearing. This is the Sunday morning been drinking too much haircut right now. But by the way, guys, I don't know if you noticed this. This is for you. This is just for you two. But I'm actually wearing kind of a Bond clothing prop. Do you guys recognize this shirt at all?
Do you know what? I don't. Chris, do you recognize that one?
No, you'd have to give us a clue, I think. It looks
okay, so Skyfall, enjoying death, when he's in M's apartment and he's wearing that shirt, or when he's in Turkey and things like that. This is the shirt that he's wearing. Yeah. I think it was appropriate for my non-shaven look and feeling like death.
Yeah, you look like you've been hiding out for a few months. It's appropriate.
Don't tell anything.
Which actually raises a point that I only realised the other day about that very scene. Do you remember in Casino Royale where obviously Bond breaks into M's apartment and she says, Bond, never break into my apartment again. Yeah. And then he does it in Skyfall. Oh, yeah. I only realised that the other day.
He's a good listener, isn't he? Yeah, he pays attention.
He does what he wants, doesn't he? One of the interesting things about sort of Bond and sort of the lifestyle of Bond is that how many people want to be James Bond, want to dress like James Bond, and sort of experience that sort of lifestyle. Now, what advice would you give to someone who wanted to have some essential pieces for a Bondian wardrobe?
Yeah, that's a great question. My first advice is that obviously, keep it in perspective. And what I tell people is I have so many people, we get emails every day to the Bond Experience where people are like, oh, I wish I could afford a Tom Ford suit or an Armani jacket. And a Tom Ford suit, retails for $5,000 to $6,000. So that's how much a Tom Ford suit costs. Some of his shoes cost $1,500. His Omega watch costs $7,000 or $8,000. There is something called a frugal Bond, meaning it's okay to get the Bond look, because the reality is I'm hoping nobody's dressing up as Bond to be Bond. I think what people enjoy, and this is kind of keep it as a real perspective, is you're emulating the Bond lifestyle, meaning you love the swagger, you love the look, you love the confidence. All those things you love about Bond in the Bond movies, you love about the lifestyle. So, wearing this shirt, for example, I'm not dressing up and pretending I'm James Bond and running around my house. As far as
you're not. That's exactly
maybe
what I think.
No, but the reality is that, you can go into, Kmart and Target and find a very similar shirt and say, something, it's not the exact shirt, but it's emulating it. It's got the same cut, the same look. It's stylized. I can blend in. I can do all these things. The one thing you want to do with the Bond lifestyle and even Bond clothing is have that moment, have that thing where it transports you, where you can escape for a moment, because that's what Bond movies are. It's escapism. It's, oh shit, I got my boss yelling at me. I've got my spouse, my significant other on me. I've got the kids wanting this. You know something? I need to watch a movie, or I need to look down at my watch, or I need to do something to escape for a moment and have that little taste, and then I'll go back to the real world and deal with it. But that's really what it is. It's just this momentary escape, and that's actually therapeutic. It's not problematic. It's therapeutic. So my advice is get something, if you need to get a thing, that lets you escape for a moment, but it doesn't need to be expensive.
So I suppose there's a thin line there, isn't it? You can enjoy you can have your little escape and wear your imitation Omega Seamaster watch or whatever it is. But then if you do go that extra mile and you are finding yourself running around the house, looking in the mirror, holding a Walther PPK and saying lines to yourself, then maybe that's the step too far. Would you say?
Come on, what are you talking about? You've done that. I know you. Tell me what guy hasn't put on a suit or a tuxedo and turned to the side like in Casino Royale and did the whole straightening out or the cuffs. Everybody's done that.
Yeah, all right. I admit it. I was just trying to be cool.
But I tell you what, I think there is a taking too far. So the taking too far doesn't happen in, having a go at those type of things. It's, and I've actually seen this with people, is when you overspend beyond your means, or it becomes a relationship killer. So, when another box shows up at your house and your wife or your family says, really, again, and it becomes, an incident, quite frankly, as opposed to something that you really take some enjoyment out of. I know people that have PayPal slush funds to afford their Bond obsession. Hiding money and hiding purchases, that may be going a step too far.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds about right. So would you say, like, what would be a great, I suppose it's a bit personal for each individual person, but like, what would you say is like a good Bond piece to buy? Is there like one particular shirt or kind of anything along those lines that you would recommend is like a good starting point for somebody who wants to get into it?
You know what? That's a great question, because I will tell you mine. I mean, when I was in my early 30s and young executive getting back into Bond, and I had a little bit of folding money, my first purchase was an Omega watch. And I remember getting the Tomorrow Never Dies, Seamaster. And it was such a huge expense. I couldn't believe it. I purchased it, felt regret, felt elation, all those things you get with a major purchase. But I still have it today. It's an heirloom piece. Something like a watch is something that you'll give down generation to generation. Clothing is probably, there's a little bit less of a connection to it because it's going to get tattered at some point, or, some people will even use a piece of clothing for display. But I think a watch is a really safe way to go.
Cool. That sounds good to me. Now, we've noticed in some of your YouTube videos with your quite vast collection, you've got some kind of screen used actual props, like you mentioned the phone from Tomorrow Never Dies, and you've also got some kind of like fan made replicas. So like what would you say is like the most fascinating of your kind of fan made replicas that you've seen, or maybe that you own, or maybe that you've just seen out and about?
So I think the most fascinating one is a piton gun, the GoldenEye piton gun. It's a fan-made piece that somebody used copious amounts of reference material, pictures. They actually, I can't believe they got this, but they have blueprints from Eon where they had exact measurements. And so they were able to replicate the GoldenEye piton gun perfectly, measurement for measurement. And it was a work of love and a work of art for this individual. So I was very proud to actually own one.
That sounds awesome.
It's very cool.
A lot of time must have gone into something like that as well.
It was amazing. I think it took, it took 6 to 8 months with all the research, the creation, creating the resin, creating the piton dart that actually, it doesn't fire, but, it displays with it. A lot of, that'd be so cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Climbing up the outside of your house.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think your other question was screen use, which one of my screen use pieces is fascinating. And it's interesting. It's not the screen use piece that has the most value to it, believe it or not, or the most, awe-inspiring moment. It's the really little tiny details. So I have a screen used CD. It's a security CD from Casino Royale. So remember when Bond goes into the Bahamas, the one and only club?
Yeah.
And he gets the little security CD and he puts it in. So I have, he takes out a drawer of a bunch of those CDs, and I have one of the screen used ones that you see kind of sitting in there. But what's amazing and fascinating to me is the detail they have, and he never opens them up and you see all those details, but you can see the writing, you can see the time of day, from the one and only club, like all those tiny little details that nobody in the world would see. They went the added distance and actually put it on there. So it's unbelievable.
That's amazing.
That's very cool.
There's something else which I quite like about Bond, which is sort of the companies which are sort of made up within the series. So things like Auric Enterprises, Drax Enterprise Corporation, Zorin Industries, things like that. And I've always thought how cool it would be.
Wait, Chris, I'm sorry, Tom's crying. Tom's crying. You okay, Tom?
Yeah, no, I'm all right, man.
Tom?
It was just the thought of having a piton gun just got me emotional there.
Sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to.
No, that's all right. So what I thought would be great is if there was a line of sort of T-shirts or anything like that that had the Auric Enterprises emblem logo on it and stuff like that. If there is any sort of fictional Bond company clothing line that you'd like to see, what would that be?
That's phenomenal. Well, sure. I'll just jump on it. I mean, I think a Spectre line of, maniacal evil villain. It would all, of course, be Nehru suits, right? The little tap collar suits and things like that. But I think that'd be kind of cool. Here's the reality of it, and I hope I'm not insulting anybody out there, but Eon, I don't believe would ever obviously do a line like this. I mean, I know we're kind of playing out here, but not too long ago in the 90s, they actually flirted with a James Bond line of clothing. And, in the 60s, they did have a James Bond line of clothing for men. I even have some of the 1960s pieces because of all the fur around James Bond. But they were actually going to have, and I have some of the prototype clothing items from the 1990s James Bond line. And it actually would have been kind of cool. It was nothing like he wore in the movies, though. It was like, inspired by James Bond type of clothing, even eyeglasses and things like that. But yeah, a Spectre line of clothing, I think, would be fun.
That sounds. I suppose they've got the kind of, I don't know if it's out in the States, but the range of like colognes and perfumes and stuff like that. Do you have that over in the States?
Yeah, we do, unfortunately. Yeah, those colognes smell like hobo.
Yeah.
And look at me not filter my opinion.
Yeah.
Those colognes, I think, are just absolutely awful. I mean, they could take, paint off of a wall. But you know what? I get it. They're trying to capture a moment. I just think there could have been so many other opportunities to connect with the Bond lifestyle.
I guess it's one of those things, isn't it? It's like that's obviously been successful because it's been around for a while. So I don't see why a line of clothing wouldn't work. I mean, I would certainly lean towards that if there was a James Bond line of clothing.
Yeah. Of course, you get a T-shirt or two. Sure.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the big questions that I had for you was I remember reading a while back now that you took on the challenge of the Daniel Craig workout and all that kind of stuff, and you obviously mentioned that earlier on today as well. So can you tell us a little bit about that? What kind of things did you have to do? What was it like? Do you still follow that routine? What's the deal?
Yeah, it's great. And I think I talked a little bit about this in the beginning, but, again, going into my 40s, I kind of looked at myself, and I was never somebody that was particularly overweight, but I had that typical white collar worker, executive body where it was kind of atrophied. It was soft, a little doughy, looking back, quite frankly. And I just looked at Daniel Craig and I said, that was me editing that, so you guys wouldn't have to.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But I said, come on, are you serious with this? He's my age. I mean, he's maybe 2 months younger, but I have no excuses. I mean, I'm trying to live the Bond lifestyle. I have the clothing, the watch, the shoes. I have an entire collection. But the thing that I walk around with every day, my body does not look like James Bond. So why don't I go that added distance? Oh, and by the way, I'll be getting healthier. I'll be, putting in for my future. I'll be able to keep up with my kids better. My wife will love me more. I don't know. She'll love me more, but she'll appreciate me getting tighter. So I did. I mean, a friend of mine who is a karate master and a trainer at the time, basically, we studied Simon Waterson, who trains Daniel Craig. We looked at his workout regimen, and we got in touch with Simon Waterson. And Simon Waterson put a personal one, so it was Daniel Craig's, but configured for David Zaritsky. And Simon Waterson's a super nice guy, connects with fans. He's not. I guess he could be rather obnoxious and egotistical, and he's just the opposite. I mean, he was a Marine and everything. So I jumped into it 5-6 days a week, and I did a couple videos about some of the techniques around it. It was very much concentrating on body type. It was very shoulders, arms, some torso work and things like that. Not a lot of cardio because you don't let any time in between reps. So some people will do they'll do the sets, they'll do the reps. And then in between sets, they'll sit there, they'll talk to their friend, they'll go get a drink of water, they'll get a cup of tea, then they'll do another set. No, this is hypertrophy training. So you are just constantly going. And your cardio is the speed to which you're doing all of those reps. And I would say within the first 2 months, I was gobsmacked. The weight started to shed off. I started to get these little funny dents in my shoulders. There was something going on. Oh my gosh, that's a tricep, with my arms. And then after time, what I started to do is I started to take a picture of myself. This doesn't sound too egotistical, but it was for me. On each one of my birthdays. So from my early 40s up until now I'm 47, I would take a picture. And my only goal for myself was, are you in better shape than you were a year ago? And I'm happy to say I am. Now, I don't do the Simon Waterson training anymore. I've sort of graduated. Now I do P90X3. So if you know anything about P90X,
Do you know what? It's sat in a little box in the corner of my room right here. I don't know whether you
it
can
looks
see it on
good
the
right
camera.
there.
In fact, it's within reach. There it is.
Are you going to do it?
No.
Well, it makes a beautiful paperweight.
No, I will do. It's the one where it's like a 30-minute workout per day, isn't it? That's the deal.
It's 30 minutes. So the reality is I was finding that it took me 15, 20 minutes to get to the gym. I would do my workout, 15, 20 minutes to get back. I was spending, an hour and a half to 2 hours in overall with the workout. It's just too much. So literally I go downstairs to my little mini gym downstairs where I do 30 minutes. I do it 7 days a week.
Nice.
And I'm in much better shape because I'm going to sound like a shill for P90X. Maybe it'll make you open your box. But I'm in so much better shape because when I was doing the Daniel Craig workout, the Casino Royale one, I have to say I was huge up here. I mean, my biceps, everything. And I'm not as huge now, but my whole body, my endurance, my flexibility, my legs, my arse, everything is just much better. My balance is much better. So I feel actually like I'm doing more of a Bond workout because I think if Bond existed, he wouldn't just be this like bar muscle guy walking in. He would be able to pivot and do all these things. And so for 47, when I trip, who doesn't, I recover much quickly. But it's easy to do. It's 30 minutes and it's a no-brainer.
Sounds good.
And does that come with a sort of a nutrition plan of sorts?
It does, but my wife is my nutrition plan. My wife, she is an amazing cook, amazing chef, but she uses very, very wholesome foods. I'll typically for lunch, I'll have a Greek yogurt with a little bit of granola for protein. I'll eat copious amounts of chicken and things like that. So I follow my own diet plan. Daniel Craig had a diet plan for Casino Royale, and I know for Spectre he had one too, where it's a ton of chicken. It's like the Chris Evans Captain America one, where you're eating copious amounts of chicken breasts. So, if I find myself getting a little small and shrinking down, I just start eating chicken.
There we go. There's the Bondian tip. Just eat chicken.
There you go.
Yeah.
Eat some chicken, folks.
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Oh, it's so good. Chicken.
So obviously you've been collecting for quite a number of years now. How long exactly have you? When did you first start collecting? And do you remember what the first sort of piece was that you first purchased?
Yeah, I mean, it was probably around 1997 with Tomorrow Never Dies. Again, just that movie pulled me right back into Bond as a young adult, or mid-age adult, I should say. My first piece being that Amiga watch that I talked about, the big piece. And then shortly thereafter, my first screen use piece was that Ericsson phone, which was just, it catapults you, right? So you get one piece. And that's the thing about James Bond collecting. It has a snowball effect. It has almost like a heroin-like effect where you get that one piece and you're like, you know what, honey, I'm just going to get a watch just because I've always wanted a watch. And it's like, I hear this also about tattoos. You get one tattoo, you say you're going to get one, and then suddenly your body's covered in art. It's the same thing with James Bond collecting. It's a snowball effect, and you just get pulled into it.
Sounds about right. So have you managed to keep track of how many pieces you have, or have you kind of lost count so far?
It's funny. We have one of our video podcasts is we had Home and Garden TV, HDTV, which I don't know if you have that over where you are, but it was a collector series that came in there, and they looked at every piece in my collection, and then they give you a price on the collection. You go, or you go, huh. But I have totally lost count, and I'm so happy that I did, because I never want to get to the point. Yeah, right. I never want to get to the point where I'm like, oh, I've got 250,000 pieces, or I've got 3 pieces, or because to me, I always get people saying to me over email or things like this, like, oh, I'd love a collection like yours, or my collection sucks because I only have this. It doesn't matter. It's the intrinsic, it's the emotional connection with whatever you have, whether it's, a DVD collection or one book or an Amiga watch or 700,000 collectibles. So I don't keep count.
I think that's probably sensible.
And it kind of leads on into the next question as well. Yeah. Which, aside from possibly the Amiga watch, what would you say is your most cherished item in the whole collection?
I think there was a group called SD Studios, Steve Dimzo Studios, back in the 90s that came out with the very first licensed James Bond props. And they had, the breather from Thunderball, and they had all these different things. But one of the things they had was a 24 karat gold-plated Golden Gun from The Man with the Golden Gun that comes apart with the cufflink and the pen and everything like that. So I think that's probably one of my most cherished pieces because it was, again, when I was first getting into collecting. It's a really cool fan-made replica prop that just feels the part, it looks the part. But I think also when people go into my collection and you want to give them one of those oh my gosh moments, I sit there, I take the gun, I take it apart, I put it back together, and it transports them back to the movie. So it's got that whole connection there.
Do you sit there looking menacing like Scaramanga did just before he shoots High Fat?
So menacing.
Yeah.
And you know what's really cool? I even had the third nipple. Nice.
Very nice. So in the collecting world, is there any like one piece that you would love to get your hands on that you don't currently have, whether that's a screen use thing or not?
Yeah, it's pretty simple too. Gosh, simple person, but in Casino Royale, so I'll just, from a clothing standpoint, there's this one outfit that Craig wears when he's in Venice. And he's chasing down Vesper and things like that, and she's in the red dress, and it's basically the whole, last part of Casino Royale. He's wearing a simple blue outfit. I have no idea what brand that was or what it was, and so us in the James Bond clothing world, we're like, what the hell is that? I would love to get my hands on that screen-used outfit just to have it. I've got a lot of screen-used pieces, clothing-wise, from Casino Royale and Quantum and Skyfall and things, but that's one kind of outfit that eludes me. And if you had a million guesses of what I would want, I guarantee you would have never said that. But it's something simple, right? It's just one of those things that just, I have no idea what it is, so it just drives me apeshit.
Cool. I bet you wish you could go back to your Tom Ford experience and then ask Daniel that then.
Yeah, and he would have run. But yeah.
That wouldn't have freaked him out at all.
Well, listen, the reality is all Eon needs to do is invite me to their warehouse. They've got a huge warehouse of wardrobe and props and gadgets, and just, let me have a day there and just turn the other way, and things will be good.
There you go. Barbara, if you're listening, you give David a call, and Chris and I will come along too, if that's all right.
That would be perfect. I think the three of us could do some serious damage there.
Next week, it's sorted. Don't worry.
Perfect.
So, how long has the Bond experience been going in total, and what's next for the Bond experience? Obviously, it's grown substantially over the recent years. Do you foresee that just getting bigger and bigger and bigger? And is there anything from the Bond experience which you want for it to happen over the next sort of year or two?
Yeah, that's great questions, all of them. So the reality is it's evolved. The Bond experience as a website, as kind of a social moment, if you will, one of those experiences, has only been around for about 2+ years. However, before that, I was doing videos with Remmert van Braun, who runs BondLifestyle.com, James Bond Lifestyle, which is an amazing website. I love his website, still do. And he's a good friend of mine. So I was doing things years before that. And then before that, it was, tons of threads on this one thread group called AJB, which is about everything James Bond. So it's taken all these different evolved forms. Where I would love to see the Bond experience go is, I think I mentioned in the beginning, a lot of the brands associated with Spectre, and certainly a lot with Skyfall, have embraced video bloggers. They've embraced people like Chris and Tom here, more and more. So we were invited last time with Skyfall to fly over to London to go to the Heineken party, to go to the Coca-Cola party, and there was 2 other video bloggers just like me, and they were just starting back then at Skyfall to embrace you guys and us as real journalists. So it wasn't about the Wall Street Journal and things like that, but they know that, oh my gosh, if David Zaritsky has 500,000 views on YouTube, maybe we should pay attention to them. Now with Spectre, all of the brands, NPL, Anthony Sinclair, they're all connecting with us in a very dedicated way, in a more thoughtful way, because they know that, number one, we've got influence, but number 2, we're the centers of truth. A brand will always sell their brand, but you and I will be very honest about it. That if there's a moment that isn't true to the Bond fan, we may call that out. So here's my hope. My hope is that Eon Production, so you called out Barbara before, but Eon Production starts to embrace the fan base. Starts to embrace people like you guys. I mean, I love your video podcasts. That's why I agreed to do this and spend my Sunday bleary-eyed morning doing it. But I really want them to start embracing them, because I have to say, and I'm sure I'm going to disassociate myself in some way, I don't know if they've always embraced the fan base. They used to do some things in the 80s and the early 90s, and things have changed from a marketing standpoint. I think they need to see people like us as true journalists, as what I call key opinion leaders. Key influencers in the Bond world, because I know, for example, I'll give you a perfect example. Land's End, who, big company, Land's End clothing company, did a video. It cost them probably close to $75,000 to produce a video, and it received about 800 views on YouTube. So we did one for Land's End, which we didn't get any money for. We just got some clothing that they sent us that were kind of Bond-like, and we did a Land's End thing, and it had 45,000 views. Wow. And so what they've got to realize is they can spend a lot of money to create a small impact, or they can embrace the fan groups who have a huge amount of influence and credibility. And it's almost guerrilla warfare marketing, but they'll create a bigger grenade effect for what they want to do. It's just sensible marketing. It's creating an experience.
It's funny you should say that. We interviewed Alan J. Porter, who wrote the book about the comic book world of Bond a few episodes back. And I was talking about a Comic-Con thing a friend of mine dragged me to over in the States. And I was thinking, okay, there was probably going to be some great Bond stuff there. And I went there and there was literally nothing. I think there was like one Skyfall poster you could buy, and nothing in the world of Bond whatsoever. And when I was in London last week, there are posters all over the underground everywhere advertising a Sherlock convention at the Excel Centre, which is like this huge venue. It's like a 4-day event and stuff. And, Pinewood do those like short kind of 1-day kind of celebrations. But I think if you compare the size of something like Sherlock, the BBC TV series, to Bond, I mean, it's just Bond dwarfs it. And the fact that there's no really kind of big events or anything like that for the fans is a crime, really, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I got to tell you, they should take a page out of Lucasfilm. So Lucasfilm, with the Star Wars fans, used to not embrace them. They would send cease and desist orders to people dressing up as stormtroopers and things like that during the 80s and the 90s. And then what happened was they started to really embrace them as ambassadors of the brand. And now they've got things like Star Wars Celebration, which is a huge convention where hundreds of thousands of people show up. And they know that people will leave those moments and, from a social media standpoint, share in the goodwill. So it's amazing, because Bond fans are so, as you're pointing out, they're so passionate and they're so connected in a brother and a sisterhood. But I feel like Eon almost sits as a separate entity, like an island outside of that, and they don't have to. They really don't.
Yeah, totally.
It would be pretty amazing to have a James Bond convention with all your sort of fellow fans and listeners, and that would just be amazing, wouldn't it? Just to have a place where everyone could get together, and it's just a shame that's not happening. I think at one point it will probably happen. It's just a case of when, because the Bond fan base, I think, it's always been massive, but with the social media nowadays and the exposure, and obviously with the standard of Bond films at the moment is so high, and the expectation of Spectre is so high, that the growth of Bond fans at the moment is probably at its highest point that it's been for a long, long time. So I think just having a convention or something like that would just be perfect. It's a really good time.
Chris, this is an exclusive. So let's send this entire podcast as kind of a rehearsal reel to the Broccolis, and let's put it out there. I think the three of us could definitely be MCs at the next Bond convention.
Let's do it. Yeah, you can tell us what to wear, and then we'll show up, and we'll keep the British end up, and you can keep the American end up. Yeah, sorted.
Done.
Sounds class. Excellent.
So moving on then, just before we come to a finish here, some questions about what's next for Bond. So what do you want to see from Spectre?
Okay, so I'll pretend that I don't know the storyline. What I would love to see from Spectre is more pithy, fun James Bond moments. I think, we've seen a bit of an evolution, even with the Daniel Craig movies, of, somber, kind of very serious, but then kind of growing and almost evolving the Bond character through Daniel Craig and somebody that's more comfortable with themselves in kind of doing the fun one-liners that are appropriate, not the grown, die another day ones, but the appropriate ones. So I want to see those fun Bond moments that connected my dad and I, as a kid, the nostalgic moments, if you will.
Very nice. I think looking at the teaser trailer, it looks very, very dark, doesn't it? It kind of almost looks like some of those shots, for example, remind me of things like The Shining or Misery, kind of like those Stephen King stories, when he's out on the lake and all that kind of stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. Yeah, definitely.
I agree. I think it's going to be, first of all, I think it's going to be beautifully shot. But it is, I think the teaser, and they even announced this, I think, in an interview, was more of a puzzle. Like, let's give the fan a puzzle and say, like, what is going on here? But the acting, I mean, just even in the teaser, is so strong. And that's where I think the Bond films have really become so amazing, that people don't just go to Bond films for the moments that you and I crave, but they go to see really good actors with great acting chops.
Yeah.
And so overall, what was your opinion of the teaser when you first saw it?
Yeah, it was amazing. I loved it. I thought it was great. I mean, I think that there were so many people that were expecting tons of action moments, more like the Skyfall one where people are smashing and banging around. But I thought it was so good and so moody. And to see, I hope I'm not going to spoil this for anybody, but Mr. White's back. You haven't seen the teaser. I don't even know why you're on social media. But it was so cool to see that in that one line, and just seeing, obviously Mr. White is not in a good way, and just, I loved it. It was amazing.
I think it's a funny one, isn't it? Like, a lot of people, when I was looking on forums to see what the general reaction was after the teaser, it was almost universally positive. Everyone was like, "This is amazing," and then the couple of voices of kind of dissent in there were saying, "Oh, there wasn't any action." And for me, it's like, well, that's kind of not the point. It's like, like you were saying about the book Casino Royale, like when you read that, there's barely any action in it. It's just tension. It's the card game. It's, screwing the check into behind the number plate on the door and all that kind of stuff. That for me is like the intrigue of Bond. You don't need all the big action set pieces. I mean, one or two is obviously a good thing. But like for me, looking at that teaser and the fact that there's no action in there is a really, really good sign. I think it's all going to be about character, plot and intrigue, and which is what we've needed for years, I think.
Yeah.
We do. And go ahead.
Sorry, go on after you, David.
I was going to say Chris, earlier you asked me about my favorite Bond scene and moment. I said about the Ericsson phone and Tomorrow Never Dies. Some of my second and third favorite scenes are the really subtle ones, like when Sean Connery steals a grape, and just, little subtle kind of acting, almost looks like improv moments are the ones that I crave, because those are just so real and simple. And that's what the acting's turned into, is very kind of real acting.
Yeah.
It's nice to watch, and I think in regards to the teaser, you didn't need to see action because there's going to be action in the film anyway. And the whole point of a teaser is to tease people, is to make them ask questions and to get them intrigued, and that's exactly what it did. So I think it was brave and it was clever and it was brilliantly done, which is very good. So have you any plans for the premiere of Spectre at all, David?
I have assumptive plans. I hope to be at the premiere, in London. So certainly I would love to be there. And if I'm fortunate enough to be there, hoping to attend some of the branded parties and things like that, Heineken, Belvedere, Amiga, if I'm so lucky. And if not, quite frankly, I will just have a ball going to my local theater and seeing it in IMAX a couple times during that first weekend. Usually I'll throw a kind of a Bond soiree party, premiere weekend, just get a bunch of my friends over and things like that, serve really good food, drink a little too much. The other thing, traditionally speaking, that I'll tend to do, and I think I'll do it again, is to watch the Craig movies in order. So, and I think a lot of us do that. You'll watch Casino Royale, then Quantum, and then Skyfall, and then just be totally preheated for it.
I think that's especially with what I'm not one of those that's read the script, and neither is Chris. So we don't know what's going to happen. We are only judging from the teaser, but I feel like the events of Spectre are going to like color the whole Daniel era, obviously throwing back to Mr. White and all that kind of stuff with a slightly different kind of feel. So I think it's going to either watching them all before in the run up to Spectre, or watching Spectre and then going back and watching them all again. I think is going to be a lot of fun.
Exactly. Hey guys, let me show you something. Hopefully I won't cut out.
Cool.
This is the cool thing about, I guess, Skype and traveling with you. But let me show you also what I'm prepping to do. And I don't think I've ever done this on any of my video podcasts, but I'm going to take you with me for a second. Is that cool?
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. Go for it. Yeah.
All right. So you're like taking a mini tour. See, normal house, normal house.
Is this going to go a bit 50 Shades of Grey when we get downstairs, or
it's already there, right? So I'm walking backwards, so I'm probably going to tumble and break my neck.
All right, cool.
But if you could see as we come down the steps,
there we go.
Starts immediately, and so it starts with like Dr. No.
Amazing.
So each spot, each movie, all of the movies have their own space. So if I kind of go there, there's, suddenly Goldfinger, and they go in chronological order and yada yada with Thunderball and things like that. You could start to see all the little parts and pieces. But the reason I'm even showing you this is I need to create a Spectre display.
Right.
So you're asking, like, what am I doing to prep for the movie? Let me show you. Hope this is coming out. So by the way, there's my Roger Moore stuff.
Very nice.
So we're going to come over here. Let me turn on some lights. All right. So if we come over here, you can see kind of in the background.
There's the Skyfall.
This is my Skyfall area.
Very nice.
Like it.
His jackets, his clothes, and things like that. So what I've got to do, there's the bad guy's outfit in the back when he's dressed as a police, Bond's bathing suit. So what I've got to do now is I've got to create a spec display.
And
screen used outfits from Quantum.
Very nice.
Screen used items over there. Do you recognize that bathing suit? Solange's bikini from Casino Royale when she's in the
Is that
the
screen
hammock?
used?
That is screen used.
Jesus, dude.
Wow.
We need to come and visit you.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, there's the Armani jacket that Daniel Craig wears from Casino Royale as well.
Man, that's incredible. What an amazing collection you've got, dude.
So now, much to the, I was going to say chagrin of my wife, but she knows this is happening. I've got to create a Spectre one. So now I've got to fill a particular wall, but you start to run out of room at some point.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Can you build an extension, or
you could possibly just kind of get all the Die Another Day stuff and put that to one side, and that makes space.
It's funny you say that. I'm thinking to myself, like, what gives? Is it the here's the Tomorrow Never Dies stuff? But what gives? Is it going to be something with Brosnan? But I'm actually thinking it's going to be Timothy Dalton.
Oh yeah, really interesting.
By the way, remember I told you about that Piton gun?
There it is.
Yeah.
Mate, that is absolutely bang on, isn't it? I mean, that looks absolutely perfect.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
I was really happy with it.
Wow.
Good stuff. So, well, thank you for sharing your collection with us. For our listeners, rather than our YouTube viewers, you must go and check out the YouTube feed so you can see what David's shown us there. But our final question for the interview before you go, which we like to ask everybody, is if you could make your dream Bond film with any actor, living or dead, any director, any kind of storyline, whatever it would be, what would you do?
Oh, wow. So director and actor, like, try to create it all together?
Yeah, it's totally, Barbara phones you up and she says, David, I want you to take care of making the next Bond film. You have complete ultimate creative control. I'm going to leave it all in your hands.
Something I would say Tarantino, because I think he would make a crazy, crazy Bond film, but I almost think I saw that with Kingsman, was kind of like a Tarantino Bond film. So I think, that's done. I would have to say Steven Spielberg. And I know that a lot of people feel like he's kind of jumped the shark a little bit, but Steven Spielberg, a thoughtful director, I think he would make it would look amazing, it would feel amazing. He's a huge James Bond fan. And I think it would be, I think of Schindler's List and Saving Private Ryan, all those classic movies. Imagine if he made like a super classic Bond film, maybe even shot kind of in a period 60s. So, once Daniel Craig goes through his motions that he doesn't want to do anymore, do they reboot it back into the 60s again? I'm not too sure. But from an acting standpoint, I think I might do an actor like, Henry Cavill is already doing Man from U.N.C.L.E. Gosh, I wish the coffee had kicked in. I'm sure I have a Bond actor in mind. You know what? I'd be up for the part.
Me too, and Chris probably. That's we'd all be up for it. But no, that sounds interesting. Actually, I think a lot of people say somebody like Chris Nolan or even Matthew Vaughn with the Kingsman thing. But I think actually seeing a Spielberg Bond movie would be really interesting, wouldn't it? And I guess that's where Indiana Jones came from, wasn't it? That was like his spin on it. So it would be good to see that, definitely.
Yeah, and Spielberg drives around in an Aston Martin, so clearly he wants to be James Bond, just like all of us.
Yeah, good man, good stuff. Cool. Well, thanks for coming on the show, David. It was really cool to meet you after all this time. We've been watching your videos for the last few years and stuff, so it was cool to chat.
My pleasure, guys. It was really fun to do this.
And thanks for giving us a quick tour of your man cave as well.
No problem. It was a quickie, but there you go.
Cool. All right. See you soon. Take care.
Take care, gents.
Bye, David.
So there we have it, the Bond experience on James Bond Radio. It was cool to chat to him, man. Lots of interesting stuff to talk over there.
There was a lot. I mean, I didn't know quite how vast it was in terms of, it's not just Bond items, Bond memorabilia. There's a clothing. He's got sort of the posters, and I mean, the amount of stuff he had was awesome, and I love the fact that he was bringing the sort of audience into it as well. So the Bond experience, if there are any listeners that haven't checked out, give it a go now, because it's definitely worth a look.
Yeah, thebondexperience.com. Now there is a guy who's not ashamed of his Bond fandom. If we refer back to Bjorn's message earlier on in today's episode, that's a guy who's flying the flag well and true, doesn't give a shit, and he's there at the forefront of Bond fandom. So we salute you, David Zaritsky.
Too right.
Yeah, I think, man, I'd love to. We've got to go and visit him at some point, and we can get a couple of sleeping bags and sleep in that basement, and have a good time. Do
you think you'll ever have like a Bond basement man cave at some point in your life?
I would love to. It depends how sort of forgiving the missus is, I suppose, on that front. But,
this is what we're finding. Well, he was relegated to the basement, his Bond stuff. So
yeah.
But, okay, here's a question for you. If you ended up in a house where you had quite a sizable basement and you could turn it into like your Bond cave, if you could style it on any villainous Bond place, what would you style your man cave around?
I would say...
So you could potentially have like an ice cave, a bit like in Majesty's when he's running through, with Blofeld chasing him. You could have sort of a volcano type thing. You could have, I don't know, sort of a sort of almost steel gantry type thing, a bit like...
Do you know what? It would have to be a Ken Adam inspired design, I think.
I think
it would have to
definitely
be. I think I might go for Dr. No's base. And the glass going out to the sea with the minnows pretending they're whales would be my television for watching the Bond films.
How cool would that be?
That would be amazing,
awesome, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So
I think that's what I'd go for. How about you?
Well, funnily enough, that one crossed my mind. But if I could come up with another one, I mean, you could really pull out the stops with a sort of volcano type. You only live twice thing, like have the walls sort of come in a little bit, like a sort of faux rock. You could have like a big circular sort of spotlight at an angle. You could have the map of the world as like your TV screen, and then your rocket. You could have a big rocket next to you, and you open it up, and it's actually a chilling cabinet for drinks. Oh my god! How good is that? Oh my god!
That's a bloody good one.
It's like a fridge. Get your beer out. Oh my! That is so good. Right? Oh my god! This has to happen. You could get and also like those little remote control helicopters that could be on the helipad, and you could like fly that around the room like you do.
I think you might have just gazumped me on your man cave basement, dude. That's a bloody good idea.
How good would that be? Wow. Okay. Hopefully that'll happen at some point, but I'll let you know. We'll pop round.
we need to get rich, dude. That's what we need to do.
That's it.
The thing. Okay. We need to get rich so we can be one of those reclusive millionaires with a Bond basement.
And if we don't, and someone else does get rich and has that idea, please invite me and Tom round for a beer, and we'll join you.
Definitely,
that'd be awesome.
Definitely. Cool stuff. So yeah, good stuff. I think David's trip through Europe with all the Bond locations over the next few months. I can't remember when he said he was going now, but sometime in the summer. Yeah, I think that's going to be amazing. So definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel and all that kind of stuff to keep up to date with all the videos we'll be posting, because that's going to be some good stuff.
Yeah, well, you think about all the Bond films that you're going with, like Austria and Switzerland, did you mention? So you got like Goldfingers, Your Majesties, all this sort of stuff, your GoldenEye, perhaps, Damn Jump, and I mean, amazing. He's going to have an awesome time, isn't he?
Yeah, it's going to be good.
Yeah, good stuff.
Good stuff. So that's Bond Collector interview number 1 out of the way. Our next interview, we're going to keep a little bit of a secret, which we'll talk about towards the end of this episode. But it's a good one.
It is a good one.
So I think it's time for some
Bond facts, flames, explosion, fire, Bond facts.
Very nice. That was more explosive. That almost sounded like Blofeld's rocket launching that one.
Yeah,
that's
exactly what I was going for. Yeah, I take the beer, and then it'll have a little string that pulls it up, and then sort of faux flames at the bottom.
Very nice.
And it could have a grill at the bottom. That's where you grill your meat.
Chris.
God,
this is amazing. And do you know what you'd also have? You'd have a train set going around the outside, which would be the monorail.
Oh my God, yeah, the monorail. And then like you'd strategically make this monorail so it goes around all the sofas and chairs, so everyone that's sitting down could get their beer from the monorail or their drink from the monorail. You'd have at the base of the rocket would be a grill where you like grill your burgers or your steak, and then you stick that on the monorail, send it round to everyone, and then above the grill, like at the top part, is the chilled section where you get out. My! How good would that be?
That would be amazing.
Oh man, it has to happen. It's got to happen.
Yeah,
you would just geek out so much.
I can see it in my mind's eye.
I can as
totally perfectly.
Oh my God, that has to man. Right, one of us will get rich and we'll sort that out.
Damn
definitely.
Right. Let's get on.
That's got to be done. Okay. So we'll go with Bond facts. So we've got Bond fact number 1. Now, this was actually the trivia question which both Tom and I came up with unknowingly that the other one did, which the question would have been, what is the most expensive Bond prop or memorabilia that's ever been sold? Bond fact number 1, in 2010, the Aston Martin DB5 from Goldfinger sold for a staggering £2,912,000.
No, it didn't. It was 2.912 million.
That's what I meant.
I was going to say, fuck me, that was a bargain.
That's well cheap, yeah. No, it was £2,912,000. Well spotted, Tom. Which is the equivalent of $4,608,500. Now, that included a 12% buyer premium. So that's a bit harsh, I thought. So you spend you buy a DB5 for 2.6 million. And then suddenly, you got to spend another 12% on the buyer's fee. So bump it up another £300,000 or something.
Yeah.
But then I guess if they've got that money anyway, it doesn't really matter, does it?
Yeah. I mean, what would you do with that? Like, where would you put it? You
that
must
would
just
be
have...
in my man cave next to the rocket thing. That would be the seating. No,
seating for the TV. Yeah.
I mean, would you drive it? I mean, you would be at such a risk. You couldn't, could you? You'd want to, though, wouldn't you?
£3 million car, you just couldn't do it.
No, you couldn't. You'd have to. But the thing is, if you just stored it in somewhere where you couldn't see it all the time, that's almost a waste as well.
Yeah.
Isn't it? It's tough. Maybe in a museum so people could see it, or I don't know. Or what you could do, another amazing idea. You could stick it in your man cave, but have a screen of either Goldfinger or just a projection of the road. And then the DB5 could be on these sort of conveyor belt things, so you can drive it, or maybe not, just something that rolls the wheels without starting it, and then you go to driving it on. Okay.
Do you know? I feel
that's
like
probably a step too far.
If you're going to spend $3 million on a car, you've probably got a huge country estate with a lot of grounds, and you could probably build a little track in your garden and you drive it around, wouldn't you?
I'd be tempted if that was the case. But anyway, so that is the most expensive James Bond movie prop to date that has ever been sold. Okay, so Bond fact number 2. In 2013, the Lotus submarine car from The Spy Who Loved Me sold for $860,000. And that was actually advertised on eBay. So it's funny how certain things on eBay are getting the sort of... In fact, Bond fact number 3, James Bond's Rolex pre-Daytona chronograph watch from On Her Majesty's Secret Service. In On Her Majesty's, George wears 2 Rolexes, and this is one of them that he wore. So the actual one for the film was on the US eBay site and it was going for £120,000, and it actually finished about 2 hours ago. So I don't know if it's been sold or not. That was the buy it now price, but $120,000 is a lot of money. I mean, I don't think anyone was going to get it, but there we go. You could have had a piece of Bond history.
Again, that's something you would buy, but would you ever wear it for fear of it falling off and losing it? I don't know whether you could.
But then I don't know I don't know. It's tricky, isn't it? But anyway, so that was number 3. So Bond fact number 4: in 2011, a poster advertising Diamonds Are Forever was sold for £129,495. Now this poster set the record.
Dollars,
for both,
I think that one, wasn't it?
Oh, sorry, dollars. I beg your pardon. Yeah, $129,495, and it set the record for the most expensive concept artwork ever sold at auction, and the most expensive James Bond film poster memorabilia that's ever sold at auction. Now, I do happen to have a picture of it, so it is quite similar to the sort of main Diamonds Are Forever poster in the style, but it's actually got quite a few different images on it. So I don't know if this is for our YouTube audience. If anyone can see that. This is basic. Obviously, this isn't the original. Who's listening on iTunes? This is one that I've printed out on a piece of A4. But this is obviously what it looked like, and it is a funky looking poster, and it's a funky design. But again, I mean, that sort of money, it's not chunk change, is it?
No, I mean that's a lot of money for a poster. A few years ago, 2 years ago now, I managed to pick up a Live and Let Die poster, an original like lobby poster that would have been used, restored beautifully, amazing. And I even got Roger to sign it for me when he did a private signing at the Bond Stars
at your
thing,
house
when he came over for lunch. And that cost, and I managed to haggle the dude down. I managed to get that poster for £400, which is again, it's a fair amount for a piece of paper essentially, but as a piece of Bond history. That's a bargain as far as I'm concerned. But considering that film came out one after Diamonds Are Forever, and that's worth 130 grand. Now, of course, that is the concept artwork. That's not the actual poster. But if you consider the difference in price there, that's pretty phenomenal, isn't it?
So whereabouts is your poster? Where do you keep it?
At the moment, it's rolled up in my wardrobe right there, rolled up in a tube. But I'm going to get it framed, and when I have a place to kind of put it pride of place next to my Thunderball artworart.
I was just about to say, you're going to have like a whole James Bond wall now. That's awesome.
Well, I'm starting on the man cave before I've even got the man cave. So there it is. Yeah,
that's good. I like it a lot. Okay, so Bond fact number 5: the deadly steel ring bowler hat used by Oddjob in Goldfinger made £62,000 in the year 2000. Now this is pounds, so £62,000. Finally, Bond fact number 6: in 2001, Honey Rider's white bikini sold for £44,000. So not quite as much as obviously the cars, but still a fair chunk of change. Now, while I was sort of researching some of these sort of auction sites, there was an object that came up which I found sort of quite fascinating, and it's something that I know you hadn't really thought about, and it's something that I hadn't thought about. I remember, like, at the moment with Spectre, there's a lot of talk about the Spectre ring, and back in the day, obviously, Blofeld from Russia and Thunderball had the Spectre ring and Fiona Volpe and everything like that. I remember when we reviewed Goldfinger, we tried to see if Goldfinger had a Spectre ring, didn't we? Because he wore a ring in the scene where he's playing cards and what have you, and we couldn't quite see, but we didn't think it was. Now, what I didn't know, or what I didn't sort of look at in more detail, was that Oddjob wore a ring in Goldfinger. I don't know if he wore it all the way through filming, but particularly when he's driving Mr. Solo to and from his sort of the car crushing place, he's wearing a big gold ring on it's the middle finger on his right hand. Okay, now this is a gold metal finger ring which features a praying Buddha with faux diamonds set in the head, and it's surrounded by Masonic icons. But it's just strange because it is a big sort of, it's an interesting looking ring basically. I'm going to show a picture of it.
Let's have a look at it.
Okay, so that is, can you see it there?
Yeah, absolutely. Hold it a little bit more centrally. Sorry, it's just off camera a little bit.
Like there?
That's it. Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, so that is a ring that Oddjob wears in Goldfinger, and there is a picture of Oddjob, and the ring is just on his finger there while he's driving.
Now,
But if you look at that, now that's interesting, isn't it? Because it's just
Yeah.
nothing that I thought about before.
do you know what? That's a really intricate, very stylized ring. Like there's a lot
It
of
is.
details going on in there. And the fact that it's never even really referred to or even focused on in the movie, like it's
No.
there when he's driving the car, you can see it's on his finger, but it's never referenced. And something like that's such a funny thing
Yeah.
that I'd never noticed before you showed me that picture.
No.
And now every time I look at Oddjob, I'm going to be looking for that ring. It's
Yeah,
it's,
me
it's
too.
crazy. It's like it's one of those things where they've just made this great detail
Yeah.
just for the sake of having it, rather
Yeah.
than like not in a bad way, but like just
No,
for the
no, of
sake of
course.
like completing the character without even
Yeah.
making a reference to it. I think, which is really interesting and great. So next time you watch Goldfinger, I wish I'd have known that before I watched it last week. Now,
Yeah.
yeah. Look out for Oddjob's ring. It's really
Yeah.
intricate and really interesting.
And the fact is, it's made from gold, and maybe it was a present from or at Goldfinger to Oddjob, but it's a Buddha as well, and that kind of tells you a bit about Oddjob's background. Maybe he is a Buddhist, you know,
Yeah.
and even though he's this lethal fighting machine, perhaps he's practicing Buddha, you know,
Yeah.
Buddhism. So yeah, I thought that was a really interesting thing, actually.
Interesting.
So
yeah, absolutely.
I'll have
good,
to try and find
good
that next
find.
time. Yeah, good find. So next we're back onto our trivia questions.
It's time to answer our Bond trivia. So I went first, so I will go first in terms of the answers.
Okey-dokey.
So my question to you today, Christopher Wright, and to the
Yes.
army of JBR listeners is, what does the R in Albert R. Broccoli stand for?
Now, I believe it sounds very similar to a packet of sweets, which I used to like when I was younger. Packet.
I see where you're
But-
going with this. Yeah.
You do. I think it is Albert Romolo Broccoli.
Absolutely right. Well done.
Thank
I
you
had
very
no
much.
idea what the R stand for. I realised it was only today when I read that fact that I was like, that's going to make a good trivia question. I had no idea what the R stood for, so I've learned something today.
I think I learned that. I think it was from either reading a biography book or watching one of the DVD extras a while ago. But yeah, I mean it's cool because it's a cool different name. Obviously, it's sort of an Italian type name. Do you know the G in Michael G. Wilson?
No, that's another one. You've got me there, Gareth. I'm going to go out for that.
Well, I don't know because I actually don't know because obviously he's got a son called Greg. Who's now working in it. I wondered if it was Greg, but let's have a look because I haven't actually.
I'm going to
researched this
harness the power of Google.
and talk
Oh,
very.
well, Chris,
What?
you've just blown it out of the water. It's Greg. That's the.
Is it Greg? Oh,
Yeah.
there we go. See, that was logical guess, but
There you go.
oh, there we go. So we got Greg and we got Romolo, which is brilliant.
Well, there we
So,
go.
there we
Well,
go.
I've learned
Excellent.
two things today.
Yes, you have indeed. Okay, so on to my trivia question for today, which was: in which James Bond films and in what scenes do we see an elephant?
Okay, so Diamonds Are Forever.
And what's the scene?
That would be in the casino with the
Yeah.
elephant pulling the one-armed bandit and winning all the money.
Brilliant stuff. Okay,
There would be Octopussy, obviously.
and what scene? Or
Let the sport
gently
commence.
scene? Yeah, brilliant. There's
That was actually a better impression than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it was. It was good. And there's also in Octopussy, you know, the circus scenes in Octopussy Circus with
Yeah.
the elephant that stands up. So obviously double the fun there.
We also have
and you said you had one more. What was the
The
other
Man
one?
with the Golden Gun
and
with
when's the elephant in
J.W.
that one?
Pepper putting his snores in his pants.
It is, and then pushing him into the clong. Excellent. Can you
Absolutely.
think of any others?
I can't off the top of my head. I think I am going to. If there's no, I don't think there is. Not that I can think of.
Do you know what? I can't think of any either. So
Ah.
well done. That's it. You got 3. Now, if there is elephants in any of the others, obviously listeners let us know and have a go at us for being silly and forgetful and wrong. But as far as I remembered, it was just those 3.
I like the way we do that. It's like, how many Bond films does this happen in? But really, what we're asking is, Can you name as many as I can? And then, I can't remember what it was now, but I remember there was one of those questions ages ago, and then there was all of our listeners kept piping up on Facebook, and they'd end up being a ton more than what it was.
Yeah,
but yeah,
it's a good one.
Stuff. So yeah,
Cool.
elephants in Bond films. If there's any more, let us know.
Yeah. In fact, while I was doing this as well, initially I was going to have a question which I might use later on, but it almost was too big a question, and it was to do with villains and their pet animals. But that would be like, I had animals on the brain for some reason, and that would take a long time to answer. But while I was thinking about that, I remembered obviously in Dr. No, the original script that Maybaum wrote before it was alternated for the film version had a monkey. Dr. No was a monkey, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I believe, did he have a pet monkey in the actual novel or not? Or was a monkey...
Oh, that's a good point, actually. I remember there was the scene with the massive giant squid.
Yeah, I remember that one.
It's been a long time since I've read Dr. No, actually, so I can't remember.
If that original script, I don't think it did, but if that original script had Dr. No, or say the villain, and the villain had a pet monkey, that'd be, yeah. Do you think that would ever happen or not? Or do you think that's something that could be rehashed in the future? We've had iguanas and we've had
well, there was
dogs
the scene in Majesties, wasn't there, where he was locked in the cage at Peace Glory and he befriends the monkey who helps him escape. That was in the early draft.
Oh my God,
wasn't it? So
they tried to bring it back, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know. I can't see that happening with Daniel's Bond, but maybe
we had Komodo dragons. You never know.
We did. That's true.
It could be instead of they get rid of the pussycat and now Blofeld's got a monkey.
Yeah, with a little fez on. That would be nice.
Yeah. Okay. So that's all I thought. So
good stuff.
What's next round?
It's time for the Guess the Quote round.
Bond. James Bond.
There it is.
So
it was my quote last time, wasn't it?
It what? Oh yeah. What was it again?
It was.
I've forgotten.
You've forgotten it completely. I don't hold out much hope for you getting the answer to this time.
Oh.
Okay. Now I had to do it quietly last time, but I can do it a bit more loudly this time.
Okay, go for it.
No.
Oh. Damn.
Now, is that a quote that's ringing any bells for you, or is it not at all?
I'm trying to. The way that you've said it, it does. There's something there, but I haven't got enough time to think about it now. Damn, I should have remembered from last time. No, can you do it one more time?
Yeah, I will give you a clue, which will give it away immediately, but I won't.
Oh, right. Okay.
No.
Is it when someone's dying or about to die or not?
Oh yeah, it is. You're on the right track.
Okay. It's not Hans, is it, with the piranhas and you only live twice?
No,
it's not that.
Way later.
Way later. Okay. It's not. Is it License to Kill? Or it's not License to Kill with a thingy with a shark. No. Later or earlier? What? Oh no, sorry, man. I think I'm stumped. Damn, I should.
I'm going to give you a clue. I have met this person.
Oh wow. Okay. So is it Koskov, Sanchez?
No, but you're on
neither
the right
of them. Oh my God! I think you should tell me. I don't deserve. Yeah.
It is 004 at the beginning of the Living Daylights.
Oh, of course it is.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Smear Spionum on the little label down the thing, cutting into the rope. No.
Yeah. Oh my God! And now you say it, I can picture it so easily because that was a really good no as well. Damn it.
Yeah,
I should have said Dr. No, shouldn't I? But no, that was Dr. No. No, that's awesome. Oh damn, why did I not know that? But good one. Okay, so this one, I think you're gonna know this one immediately. Okay. Immediately, but I'm gonna try my best to do it. Okay. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if I am. Okay, here we go. Nie tom głowy stoka. Kujia pashi.
That's another one of your foreign language quotes that I love, and I got it immediately. You're right.
I thought you would.
Let's hear it again, please. That's a good performance. Okay.
This is hard. Okay, wait. Nie to Sorry. Okay, here we go. Nie to Glover's Dogger. Could be a chat. Oh, damn. Okay, wait a minute. Okay, one more. Okay, here we go. Oh my god, it's so hard to say. Okay. Nie to Glover's Dogger. Kujia Pashi.
Very good. I so badly
Right.
want to say the next line, but I can't because it will give it away to our listeners. But
Well, I'll do one more,
all
or
right,
not.
okay,
No.
go on.
Okay,
Do it.
I'll nail it this time. Nie to Glover's Dogger. Kujia Pashi. That's a bit more like it, I think. I don't know.
That's really good.
Was it?
I love the quote round. I think it's my favourite bit.
It is good,
Good
isn't it?
stuff. Oh, I so
The
badly
trouble-
want to say that next line.
The trouble with the foreign ones is you got to just keep rewinding and play to like phonetically
Yeah.
spell it out. But it's
Well,
good fun.
Your Living Daylights one, man. That
Oh, yeah.
a few weeks back, man. That was a classic. That was so good.
Yeah. Cool.
But there we go. Good stuff.
There we
So
go.
Chris will reveal the answer to that next time.
I will.
So last time we had a listener quote from Mr. Daniel Martins, all the way
That's
over
right.
from Winnipeg, Canada. And
Nice one.
his quote was this.
Marginal quality from dubious sources.
Okay, so did you get that one, Chris?
Well, it's a film that I'm quite partial to, this one. So I did happen to get it. But again, delivery, brilliant, I thought. Superb.
Good stuff. To be honest with you, I didn't get this one. I know it from somewhere, but my thoughts went to the dude in Diamonds Are Forever when
Which one?
is he? I always get confused with the one from Goldfinger. Is he? No,
Which
it
one?
is the Diamonds one. The guy with the bushy white moustache who they talk to about the diamonds, and he tells Bond all
Oh.
about the diamonds. That's who I thought it was, but
Yeah,
I know
yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
him. But I
No,
imagined
no.
it's an equivalent character.
Yeah, good guess, I think. But yeah.
Okay, so let's hear the answer.
Hi guys, Daniel Martin's calling back with the answer to last week's Guess the Quote. If you guessed that last week's quote was from everybody's favorite MI6 art expert, Jim Fanning, you'd be correct. It's from when he and Bond are talking about Kamal Khan just before the Fabergé egg comes out in Octopussy. And take care, guys. Talk to you again.
Okay, so there we have it from your favourite Roger Moore Bond movie, Octopussy. There it is.
It's a good one. Yeah, our expert Jim Fanning. That's a good little scene. I like the old Sotheby's scene as well. It's
And
cool.
an excellent performance there by Daniel. Well done. Good stuff. So we have a new quote from a listener this week, which is from JBL listener Bram Clark.
Nice one,
And
Bram.
he sent us in this.
Hiya guys, my name's Bram from Bolton. I've just finished listening to the latest episode of your show and really enjoyed it again as usual. It's great to be able to hear your podcast every 2 weeks and spend time in the company of both yourselves and also fellow Bond fans from around the world, and to be able to hear everyone's thoughts and opinions and to learn so much about the series of films that we all love so much. I was listening to your show recently and your request for anyone who hasn't yet sent in a quote for the Guess the Quote round to do so, so I thought, why not? I'm usually more at home playing guitar than I am doing impersonations, but I'll do my best. So without further ado, here goes. If you'd like me to? Yes. Excuse me. Thank you. I'll do it again, just one more time, just in case. If you'd like me to? Yes. Excuse me. Thank you. Okay, that's it. There you go. Well, I hope that stumped most people out there. I'm sure there's a lot that will get it straight away. I did try to go for one I think is a little difficult, but you never know. We'll see. Okay, well, keep up the good work, guys. As I said, I really do love the show. And with Spectre on the horizon later in the year, it's a great year for Bond. Keep up the good work, guys. All the very best. Bye-bye.
Okay, so this one's a tough one. I know I've heard this from somewhere. I don't know what it is. I tell you what, what my mind immediately went to is one of the quotes you did recently, which was, "Oh, a surprise!" That one.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that.
Yeah.
So I immediately
Yeah.
thought "Man with the Golden Gun," but I don't think it is. Yeah,
I
interesting.
think
Any thoughts?
there is a slight link there. I mean, I've got an idea of what it is for sure, and it's not an easy one. It's a really good one. Like Bram, he did it well though. Bram, nice quote.
Yeah.
And I think I know what it is, and there was a slight kind of a link with the idea that you just had. So you're on the right lines, I think, anyway. But it's a tough one, and we like tough ones. So yeah, excellent quote there, Bram.
Good stuff. Excellent stuff. So moving on. Next up, as part of our usual Bond quiz game show extravaganza section at the end of each episode, we have Guess the Music Cue.
Yeah.
So you played this one last time. Let's have a listen again. Okay, so I remember getting confused last time and getting my Thomas Newmans and my David Arnolds mixed up. But
because you said it was one or the other, didn't you?
Yeah, and now I listen to it again. I don't know what I was thinking. I know exactly what this one is.
Yep.
Would you like me to tell you?
Yeah, definitely. Go for it.
This would be Skyfall when they go to the new base for MI6.
It is indeed. Excellent one. Nice one. New digs. Good answer. I think quite a few of the listeners got that. And so congratulations to anyone who did. Now, we've got a new one for this podcast. And this one is an interesting one because it's not a long segment. I mean, none of them are long. It's quite a short segment, but I'm really interested to see who gets this because it's quite a good little bit of music. So, okay, so the new Guess the Music Cue for this podcast is... Okay, so there's a music cue for this week. What did you think of that one, Tom?
I liked it. It's very nice. I'm excited to hear the answer next week.
Cool, good stuff. Well, that will be on its way. So, what's the next round of our TV quiz bonanza type thing?
Well, it would be complete the lyric
section.
Which, if you don't know, is where one of us poses some deadpan lyrics to the other one, and then we try and complete that lyric. There we go.
Okay.
The clue was in the title, really, wasn't it? Complete the lyric section.
It kind of is, yeah. Just a little bit. It was kind of.
So if I remember rightly, it was your turn last week, wasn't it?
It was. Now, when we do a new lyric, we deadpan it. When we play it back again, we kind of sing, give it a bit of a melody, don't we?
Mm.
Now, when it comes to my melodies, sometimes I like to mix them in with other tunes. Sometimes I like to make them so unrecognizable that it makes it a bit harder for Tom. And sometimes I just try and sing as badly as possible. So it's not easy.
You do get really creative sometimes. Like sometimes you go into new musical realms that they boggle the mind, really. It's kind of like, I don't know whether it's actual genius or whether it's just complete and utter disaster. I don't know. Like, there's a thin line between madness and genius, and I think that's true. What you tap into when you sing back your quotes.
The distance between the two is only measured by success, so I guess it depends.
Ooh, I like that one. That was good. Right. Well done.
Okay, so here we go. Are you ready?
Yes.
So I want the lyric as soon as I've said it, yeah? Have you got an idea? I think you had an idea, didn't you?
I think
so here
I did,
it is.
Yeah, go on, let's hear it.
The complete lyric for this week is I wasn't looking, but somehow you found me.
There's some kind of magic inside you that keeps me from running. But just keep it coming. How'd you learn to do the things you do? Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. Nobody does it better. Have I got it right?
Potentially no.
Oh,
but maybe.
Bollocks. Have I got the wrong verse? Shit. Do it to me again.
Yeah. Okay, let's try it. I wasn't looking, but somehow you found me.
It's not that line, is it?
No, it's a lower key one.
Oh, God. Hold on a minute. Sing it to me again.
Oh, you really want it again?
Yeah, okay. I do.
I wasn't looking, but somehow you found me. It's quite a low-key sentence, the next one.
Son of a bitch. I can't believe you've got me.
I tell you what, do you want the first 3 words? I'll deadpan the first 3 words.
Yeah, go on.
I tried to.
I tried to hide from your love. What is that word?
Love, and then the last one. What do you do if you go
Light.
into a dark room?
Light.
Yeah,
I
that's
try to
it.
have from your love. Nice. I got
Yeah,
there
that's it.
eventually.
Well done. Okay, should
Thank
we do
you.
it in? We'll do it in. We'll do it together. Yeah, you ready?
Okay.
As in
What,
one
is it,
after
what was
the
the
other.
three words
Okay.
again? I tried to hide.
Yeah, from your love light.
Okay, cool.
Brilliant. Well
Yeah,
done.
nice.
Well done.
All right, cool.
Okay,
We're on board.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
So, I wasn't looking, but somehow you found me.
I tried to hide from your love light. Like heaven above me, down the sky who love me, is keeping all my secrets safe tonight.
Brilliant.
Very
There we are.
nice. That was a good one.
I'm
Do you know what?
Yeah.
I'm impressed with that. You got me, man. That was a good one.
On Spy, it's quite a tricky one, that one, I think, because it's a low key. You always think it's going to be one of the more well-known ones, I think. But yeah,
There we go.
Okay. Well, I'm a bit nervous now. So what's
Well, Chris,
you've got
right?
a
You
deadpan this
should
week.
be. You should be nervous because
Right.
if you get this one, you will be crowned the Bond Master because I've
I'm
got
crap
a
at
fiendish one for you this week. This isn't even a joking fiendish one like I did with Three Blind
Three
Mice.
Blind Mice.
This is
right.
a genuine fiendish one that I don't think
Right.
I'd even get if you
right.
pose it to me.
Okay. Okay. Here we go.
I'm going to deadpan it, which is going to
Okay.
make it even harder for you. I've got to be honest. Hey, yeah, yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, that is a tough one, isn't it?
I bet it's a lot easier when you sing it how it's sung.
That's true. That is true.
Okay,
That
can
would
you give it
away.
to me one more? Oh, well, I mean, it won't make any difference. But yeah. Go on.
Hey, yeah, yeah.
Wow. That's a tricky one. I
I
think
will be
I'm not going to
impressed
have
if-
a clue until you say it in June
Yeah.
next time
Well,
round.
there we
Tough
go.
one though.
Give it some thought. I'll give you a
I
little
will.
clue in that you are
No,
a fan
no.
of this song. I know that you like it.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
there's one little bit.
That's pretty much
But-
all of them aside from Madge. No,
Yeah, and rightly so.
No. Yeah.
Good stuff. So there we go.
There
we
we
will
are.
reveal the answer to the lyric section next week. And if anyone gets that one, I'm going to be really, really impressed.
There will be
but
people
there
out
we go.
there. Yeah, definitely we'll get some JBL listeners that will get that, I think, for sure.
So, concluding today's episode, we have our brand new feature of the Bond Celebrity Death Match. Now, you did have a little theme tune for that last week, didn't you? I forgot what it was, though. It was good.
So have I, yeah. How'd it go?
It was like Bond Celebrity Death Match. No, something like that.
There we
I can't
go.
remember what it
That
was.
sounds
Yeah.
good. I think we should
Okay.
just make it up each week.
All right, until we settle on one
on
that
a good one,
just
yeah.
keeps happening. Yeah, good stuff.
Okay, so what are the rules for this one then? We're slightly mixing it up this week, aren't we?
Well, we had the idea last time of doing top trumps, Bond top trumps, where we draw a card each at random and face those two characters off against each other. But I have searched high and low for my Bond top trumps cards, and I cannot find them anywhere. So you're going to have to just double draw it for me this time until I can. Dig them
Okay.
up. So there we go.
So I've got a pack of top trumps here. Now they're all characters from the film. But they do include Bond as well, all the different versions of Bond. So we could get some interesting matchups. Obviously, we don't know quite who's there. There's not. I'm limited by the number of cards. So people like the Thai boy that's selling the elephants from Man with the Golden Gun probably won't be in here. But you never know. What I'm going to do, I could either cut the pack twice, or I could flick and you tell me when to stop, and then that'll be the first one. What do you think?
All right, yeah, I think we'll do the and then I just tell you when to stop. Okay, so
ready?
Yeah.
Ready?
Oh, hold it a little bit higher. Hold it a little bit higher
sorry.
with the camera. That's it.
Ready?
Good stuff.
Steady.
Okay. Stop.
Okay, so the first one in James Bond Celebrity Deathmatch is, I'm going to show it to the camera and look at the same time, is Dr. No, James Bond from Dr. No.
James Bond
Sean
from
Connery,
Dr. No.
James
Connery
Bond.
in his prime. That's a tough
That
one,
is
man.
that is almost, you'd say, unbeatable. But okay, let's just see. I mean, everyone else in this pack is just shitting their pants right now. They do not want to be drawn out.
Yeah.
So what I should do is each week, the ones that have been used, we'll
leave
out
out,
for the
yeah.
next time. Yeah. Okay, so here's the next one. Give me a shout when you want me to stop.
Okay. Stop.
Okay. So, Sean Connery, James Bond from Dr. No, is due to face in Celebrity Deathmatch Emilio Largo from Thunderball.
Oh, okay.
Wow, so that's quite good because we've got an actual Bond versus Largo, like in the film.
We have an actual representation of how that went down. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
So, just in case we didn't explain it properly at the beginning, Bond Celebrity Deathmatch is where we pick two characters at random from the top trumps and we discuss what might happen if they were to have a fight with each other. So there we go. So we've got Bond versus Largo. So we kind of know how that went, really.
We do. I mean, it was a good battle. There's lots of fisticuffs involved.
Well, Largo holds his own in a fist fight, doesn't he? Has to be said.
I mean, he's a big lad. He is a big lad. He's got bulk behind him. I think he is disadvantaged though, because his left eye, he's got the eye patch. If Bond comes up, Bond can take him from an angle and come up from behind him. Is his left or his right eye?
It's a good question, and one I can't answer.
On the card, it's his left eye, but sometimes they reverse the images, don't they? I think it is his left eye. But yeah, so Largo has got that disadvantage. But then we talked about special sort of weapons or maneuvers. Largo's got the cigar for heat and the ice for cold. So what could he do to James Bond with those, eh?
Well, I guess it depends on the situation, doesn't it? If he's managed to straddle Bond, he could do he could get him on the nipple with the cigar. That would be extra painful, and then apply the ice to double up the pain. I feel. Yeah. I mean, if we think about the actual fist fight they had, it was very high energy. It was lots of punches being thrown and all that kind of stuff. And then, and obviously, Domino is who ends up killing Largo, and Largo did actually best Bond. He was about to kill him.
Well, here we go. This is it.
So I think if Domino hadn't have been there, would that have been it for 007?
Yeah.
I don't
could
know.
He potentially have found another way out of it? I mean, they both made each other bleed, didn't they? I remember Bond got blood. I mean, Largo he's a handy guy, isn't he? Yeah. He made Bond bleed. He obviously had him on the floor. Yeah, he did. He best Bond. You're right. So if Domino wasn't there, would Largo have won? Or would Bond, obviously he's in those situations before, would his cunning have helped him to try and get something else in the boat to sort of stop him or distract Largo or whatever? Yeah. I mean, could we call this a potential tie? The fact that Bond didn't actually beat him?
What do you think? Is a good one. I would say, so the card is a representation of Connery in Dr. No. So he's a few years younger, or 2 years younger than he was in Goldfinger. So maybe that extra 2 years would have just given him the edge against Largo.
I think so.
3 years, not
3 years. Yeah. But I think you're probably right. Although, strangely, it says Dr. No, but the picture's clearly from Goldfinger. So
that's true, yeah.
Maybe it's just Sean Connery as Bond, and they just, I think that's what it is.
But that's a good matchup, as it was in the movie and as it is in Celebrity Deathmatch.
So I think basically we got to go with Bond does win because he does. It's Sean Connery does. Bond.
Yeah,
because he always does. And his style and charm is 007, so he's got to be good. But I think out of everyone in this pack, Emilio Largo is probably one of the closest that you'd get to potentially beating Bond because, like you said, and maybe with that viewpoint, perhaps some people might have ranked him higher in the villain system. The fact that he did best Bond in the fight, you never know. So. Excellent stuff. I think that's a great deathmatch. So we're happy to go with that. We say Bond,
absolutely.
But a very, very tight fight.
Very close finish. Yeah, absolutely. Which brings us on to an interesting nugget of news, actually, which is that, bizarrely enough, MTV2 is rebooting the Celebrity Deathmatch series. If you remember watching it, they had like those clay figures, and they'd have two celebrities that would face off in a boxing ring. Yeah. It just came out yesterday that they're rebooting it and relaunching the series. So I reckon somebody at MTV obviously listens to James Bond Radio, and they thought, you know what, let's bring that back.
Yeah, I think that, they obviously knew with the listeners going on about Celebrity Deathmatch, it's going to be huge now because like the JBR podcast spreads all over the world with what is it now? 850 million listeners?
Something like that. Well, it was 100,000 by the beginning of this episode. I think by the end of it, it's probably that. Yeah, 850 million. Yeah.
So cool. Yeah. They'll have to do sort of an actual Bond related one would be awesome. But anyway, we've got our own one, so that's good. So great.
I think
great
they
Celebrity
did do
Deathmatch.
Connery versus Moore, actually, if I remember
I'm sure.
vague memory of that. But there we go. So Bond Celebrity Deathmatch in the bag. Bond prevails over Largo. And there we have it. Good stuff.
Yeah.
So that about wraps up episode 37 of James Bond Radio, The Collectors of Bond, which, as we mentioned before, is a two-parter.
Part 1. Yeah.
And next time we will be talking, or rather you will be talking, because the interview's already in the bag, to a highly esteemed Bond collector. That's as far as we're gonna say today, but we'll post a little hinty nugget on Facebook next week as usual.
We left one last week, didn't we? A nice little photo of myself trying to pull off the pose. But we'll leave a nice little image for next week as well.
A nice little nuggety hint. So so there we go. As usual, just like to say thank you to David Zaritsky for coming on the show with a great interview today. Make sure you head on over to thebondexperience.com if you want to get involved with everything he's doing over there. Until next time, I've been Tom Sears.
I've been Chris Wright.
And James Bond Radio will return with The Collectors of Bond Part 2 in 2 weeks. We'll see you then.
Podcast 38. See you then, guys. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.